Hey, where'd my chat go? And why does Quinn get a unique? You know what would have been really cool if, I mean, this is probably way harder to do, but if they designed a like a puzzle box from scratch, right? And then so there's no hints and they tell everybody there's like an event at a certain time and you have to open it starting at that time. And and then you get the reward is based on how fast you do it compared to other people. I destroyed the last one. What do you mean? Absolutely destroyed. Um, yeah. Oh, we got this new Joseph video to watch. I have to. Damn, I have to mute it because of the song in it. Sorry, YouTube. You won't be able to hear it. I'll leave closed captions on though. What is this? An ARPG tier list that no one can disagree with. Yeah, that's pretty accurate. What do you mean? Last Epoch is 1, Path of Exile 2 is 2, Diablo 3 is 3, Diablo 4 is 4? Pretty good. Why does this post have 2,000 upvotes? Well, I, what? What is that, dude? This one's good. This one's good here. I haven't seen that interview yet. I think I'll watch that soon. Let me see. Alright, yeah. Need to mute this because he uses copyright song. Dude, he's crazy making these videos, and he always uses copyrighted music. Greetings. This is from This video is from Calandra League. I mean, it's covered by the ad, but this is Calandra League footage. I do. I have to mute it for YouTube because there's copyrighted music. That's the downside of YouTube streaming. You think you can get hit without dying? Oh shit, he tanked the hit. Yeah, this sewed sounds awfully like it. Is it sewed or is it soad? Or swad? Why is his text so high? Hey, he tanks it. I feel like annihilating light unique was like a mistake. Shit's OP. Oh, okay, let me re-enable the audio. That was buffed, apparently.
Secret is behind having a successful live service game so we could share it with the world. One of the things that I've always thank you. Enjoy. True. So you're one of the founders of Grinding Gear Games. What led you guys to make Path of Exile, and did you guys think you would make it this far?
So I actually was one of the founders straight out of university.
I don't know, my
I was
PC, all the stuff
friends
should be
with
here by
Chris, who
December
he
4th.
was basically my best friend through university, and we kind of. I mean, I knew I wanted to be a game developer from the
Little
point I was like
last
10
minute,
years
but
old,
you
right?
know, it
Like I
should be
was doing
fine
game
unless
development like
something
as a
gets delayed
hobby
and then
right
it's
from
not
that
fine,
point.
but
So it really wasn't a question of like, was I going to be a game developer? It was a question of like, how is that going to happen? And Chris, he was actually the one who sort of suggested, look, what we need to be doing is making a sequel to Diablo 2. That was
listen,
basically his
as much
his
fucked up
view on
shit as
things.
I
And I
do while
honestly,
building a PC, I've never broke one before, okay? I've done some crazy shit to PCs too. You know what? I'm gonna come plug in my old phone so I can get you this picture today because I've been saying it forever that I'm gonna show this picture and let me plug it in. Let me actually plug it in here. Yeah, I bought everything. I mean, it's not really the old PC. I'm still using it. It's just my stream PC now. Yeah, this is what I ended up getting. Seven 7800 X3D. This is not a very good name to say. 7800 X3D. They gotta come up with a better naming principle. You don't doubt the Barracuda hard drive. 5400 RPM, dude, it's crazy.
Love Diablo 2 as well.
Yeah.
But like I wasn't like at the time when he was suggesting this, I wasn't still a player of it. You know what I mean? Like I'd played it a huge
Loud
amount
pop, that's
earlier,
pretty
but
scary.
Chris was still deep in Diablo 2, and obviously
Pretty much every time I build a PC, it never posts until I do some like I don't think I've ever built one and it immediately like it posts and it's fine. I always forget to do something or something.
love the game.
It's never just worked.
But he just made a really good case for the fact that you know what, like there hasn't been a game that got the whole formula right for a really long time. Like there was no evidence at the time that Blizzard was making it, right? Like we just had no idea.
Yeah, there was like a 10-year lull or something, right?
Yeah, it was that because I mean that's the whole thing. But effectively,
Forgot
they
to turn on
hadn't
the
announced
power
anything.
supply.
You know, like
Forgot
as
to
far as we were concerned, it was just like
plug in one
here's
of
just
the
a
front
game that was
header
still selling. By the
thingies.
way, like people were still selling physical copies of Diablo 2.
Yep.
Like it might have been like 10 years later.
Don't
Or
push
something
a
like that.
RAM in all the
The
way.
game was still selling like hotcakes, and it's like okay,
it's still good today.
yeah. There were you and
It's
so you
always
had a game and
something.
it's like okay, no one's made like a true successor to this thing. It's still selling in stores. Obviously, people, you know, there's still a huge amount of demand for the stuff. Why the hell, you know, like are we not the ones doing this? So yeah, I mean, basically you know, we decided, hey, we'll just get started. And I was doing a lot of hobby game development. Chris had done a little bit of that, but you know, he was actually doing some security stuff. And we were just like, okay, like, well, let's just do it then. So yeah, we just started writing code and getting things done, and you know, we went a long way. And you know, I remember at the very beginning because like we actually did like think, okay, well, what is the what would success look like?
Yeah,
For
I
doing
got a
this,
new
like what, like if
monitor
we're going to do
too.
this, like what would we have to actually achieve? And the thing that we thought that we needed to achieve was effectively 10,000 concurrent players. That was the amount that we sort of worked out that if we had that, the amount of money that we would be making would be able to
Premium
support the studio,
HD. What is
and
that?
everything would be okay. So that was kind of our like what, you know, what we were trying to do. So
I don't
anything
know.
beyond that
Some
point, as far as we were
AOC
concerned, was just gravy. You know what I mean? Like
1440p,
everything done was
240
great.
hertz.
So yeah, I mean, we pretty much achieved that like right from the start. Like as soon as we had our closed beta, like you know, things were going well and the company just did really well. So yeah, it's been pretty crazy. But yeah, I mean, as I said, like that was kind of our thing. Like we never really
Oh no,
at the
AOC are
time sort of
kind of
thought that we
shit and kind
like
of
we weren't
good at
thinking
the
like we
same
had to be the
time.
biggest game ever. We were just like we can be sustainable if we have 10,000 concurrent users. So that's the audience we need to attract. If we can do that, then we're good. And so that was kind of our thinking. I think the sort of the grander scale is something that yeah, it wasn't really in our mind.
Yeah. So I mean, obviously, Path of Exile has been a bit of a standout success, especially like with free-to-play games, ARPG specifically. I still think there's not a lot of competition out there. Even you guys saw an opportunity, and I mean, we've had a couple of games come out over the last few years, but
I don't know. There's just nothing else I really want to stream right now, so yeah, stalling PoE video time for 2 weeks.
Thing in the same vein, what do you guys attribute to the game's longevity and its success?
I mean, if what Viro this is main manager man guy said that he did like a super juiced map in PoE1 with the 9800 X3D and whatever 480, and then he got like 275 as his 275 FPS as his low number. So yeah, it should be pretty good.
So when we started, I guess what we saw was there were kind of like 5 pillars to make a good action RPG. Like and these are the things that we thought. Okay, like there are people who have some of these, but there's no other game
1440p.
that has all of them except for Diablo 2.
Mhm.
So the first one would be well, I mean, in no particular order. You've got random level generation.
I'm kind of excited to see if 240 hertz is a meme or not. Will I actually be able to notice it above 144?
Yep.
For longevity, you just need to have it. You need to have it. I mean, you need to do it well, because if you don't have that, I mean, look, things are just going to get boring very quickly. You've just played through the same thing 1,000 times. I mean, obviously, even with random level generation, that can still happen, but it takes a lot longer. The next thing is a secure online economy. So effectively, you have to have the ability to trade items, and it has to be secure in the sense that nobody can dupe them. There's no cheats. There's nothing like that. Like, that's really important for that long-term feeling, because it makes the stuff that you find feel like it has value.
Yeah.
Which I think is very important for the long term. The next one is that you have to have
Yeah,
random
probably
random
not
item
getting
system.
240 FPS in PoE2, but you know. I would have only got a 144 hertz, but there was only 240, so I was like, okay, I mean, whatever, it's fine.
And what I mean by that, what I mean is like,
The monitor prices are so crazy now. They're so crazy cheap. Like a few years ago, I bought my 1080p 144s for $150 or something, and the 1440p 144 hertz were like $500. Now they're like 200.
the item system has to have
My
elements of
budget? Too
chance,
late, I already got the monitor.
and it has to be that anything you kill could be the thing that could drop the next amazing thing that you need to find. So, in practice, since we launched, we have also added more deterministic things as well, which I think do have a place. But you certainly need it needs to be that just killing any random monster could be the one that drops like the amazing item. Like, you still need that feeling all the time. Otherwise, you know, you like, if you don't have that, then what happens is that you see then you finish a grind, and then the next giant grind is like stretching out ahead of you. And if you don't think you're going to get any rewardingness until the point where you finish that, that's a good moment that you might choose to quit. So it's actually one of those things that is really important as well.
Yeah.
The next one is you need action combat. And at the time, the reason why what we were talking about there is, as opposed to the kind of more MMO style combat that you had back then, which was like very like, you know, like just everything's on cooldown, like you have a million abilities and it's just kind of like one thing after another. That sort of cooldown rotation, like sort of slower paced combat that you had from the MMOs at the time. And was that all of them, or did I say 4? I can't quite remember now. Where was I up to? Did I miss one?
Maybe, I think so.
No, right. So there was the other one. The other one was a
You said the loot
system
and
of
the
character
action
customization.
combat and the trading.
Yeah. So a deep system of character customization. So effectively, you need enough depth in the way that you build your characters to make it so that you're willing to play through the same character. So not through the same character, through the game again, but with a different build, so that can still be interesting to you. And that was something that D2 didn't really have as much. But one thing D2 did have was the concept of the ladder reset, which is effectively like the fresh economic start. And that concept was ultra important because, and once again, if
I
you're
wonder
doing
if we'll get more than 2 skill bars in PoE2, because I think we're going to need it. I wonder if, or maybe there's a lot less situational stuff, like, I don't know, I imagine you still curse and all that stuff, but,
resets, then you need to you know, have the ability for your character to be different every time. There needs to be lots of build variety and things that you can do, so that you feel like you're having a different experience each time as well. So those are kind of the like 5 pillars that we had, and I think that really like at this point, the one that I think a lot of companies still don't have, the ones that I think that companies still often don't do. One of them is they're really afraid to do full economic resets where there's absolutely zero progress that carries on.
Yeah, UIM text would be cool, kind of like how Dota does.
Between the leagues. That's something that, so a lot of companies are doing seasonal content now, but the thing that after they do the first one that players will always say is, oh, we want you to have some way to skip the campaign, we want to have some way to, like, you know, to blah, 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 keep, right? They're going to say that, right? But I think it's actually ultimately long-term very harmful, because it means that like when you have a full economic reset, it means that new players can join your game and not feel like they're behind everyone. Like they're behind everyone in terms of knowledge, but they're not behind everyone in terms of like, physically speaking, everyone who
Yeah.
starts a Path of Exile league is on the same playing field, apart from what they know about the game. So
Okay, OLED friendly UI. You just make the UI like into jelly and it has physics based on what the game's happening. So your like bars and shit start like flopping everywhere constantly.
I think that's super important. So that's one that a lot of companies still aren't doing. But the other one as well that a lot of companies don't do is item trade with no binding of items, and so
Yep.
that really keeps
No.
the value. And a lot of companies are very afraid to do that. Like it's one of those things I think is ultra important. Like it leads to so many problems, and people look at the problems and they assume that those problems are worse than the benefit. And I
Yeah.
think that's partly because the benefit is a little bit more intangible. Like it's harder to kind of appreciate the value that
Wait, what are the problems of having everything tradable? I only see good things.
players feel like, because it's kind of like it doesn't even kind of matter initially, and it's like one of those longer term kind of like concerns. But I think
Yeah,
that
but I mean, even in like in D4 and whatever, there's still RMT.
that is really valuable, and it's something that I wish more games would do.
I'm actually really happy you said something about that, because I think it's one of the things where, like, I look at you guys. I also I play Warframe. That's one of my big games, right? And you guys are very similar in that, with like being able to trade loot and whatnot.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so many games stay away from that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it adds so much more value, not only to what the player finds in the game, but
Mm-hmm.
like, I don't really know how to put my finger on it exactly, but I think it actually does have something to do with those concurrent player numbers, and it's something that
Some
brings
decent
players
shoe
back
skin today.
because they know, no matter what, when they're playing the game, that there's really nothing keeping them from reaching the rest of the
Trade player,
players
don't take
that
it.
might
What do
be
you mean
ahead.
trade bots? You mean trade bot? There was one. There was one this league, and before this league, there was like none for like over a year. There was one a couple years ago, like a ranger with a bunch of spam letters. That guy disappeared. Then there was none, and then he was a real person, so there was no bots.
Ahead of them.
Right.
No, there's no
So
way that guy
yeah,
was a real
that's
person.
that's cool. So where was I at? So you guys already have a successful game with PoE. You guys could have just visually updated it and continued to grow it. Why did you guys choose to make a second game, making PoE 2? And also, why did you choose to support both?
So it's funny because we kind of creeped towards it in a strange way. The very initially, the plan literally was, okay, we need to visually update Path of Exile 1. But there was a very
I mean, armed tiers, scammers, and hackers should actually face jail time if you apply like real life stuff. Like, I mean, they're literally just farming a business. Like, if you go into a shop and smash their window, you're going to jail, right?
very specific thing that was that was the big problem at the time. And effectively, what it is that the rigs for the for the player characters, that's like one of the first things that you'd need to make in a game, right? Because everything, like all the character animations and all the skills, but also all the armors need to be attached to them and all
Yeah,
that stuff. Like,
Solid
all that stuff
Fark
kind of goes on
is
top of
back
that.
on a second
So
account,
once you've
though.
done that, it's something that you really can't change without redoing, everything related to characters. And we were like, okay, these rigs are from 2006. The
It
people
was
who
like
made
Santa
them at the
Claus or
time were very
something.
inexperienced.
Yeah.
We didn't know what we were doing. We also, every player character had its own rig, which means that we were doing 7 times the amount of work to support everything that we should have needed to do. And just the overall, there were just so many
Heist
problems with them.
man.
So like, okay, in order to make the graphics of PoE 1 better, we're going to have to change these rigs. So we make new rigs, and we're like, okay, now we're going to have to re-rig all the armors. But if instead of re-rigging armors, like, surely we should visually update the armors instead of just re-rigging the old ones, right? Because like,
Yeah.
obviously, it's like, well, we're doing much work anyway. We might as well just create new items because those will look better and everything will be better than that. And we have to make new animations for everything. So rather than like remaking old skills, I mean, effectively we might as well be making new ones, right? That are cooler and better.
Yeah.
So effectively, it started out there. And at some point, we're like, okay, but like the graphics of the starting areas in PoE 1, we like the first act is like a particularly ugly. We really should like make a new act one, so to make that look better as well. Because like by the time you got these great looking characters, but then they're in old environments, like that looks bad. So we really should update that as well. So effectively, like we just kept on like more and more things kind of like got added and added as like and effectively
it just turned into a new game.
Yeah, it sort of did like that. And so
yeah, I want to look at let's look at like the first PoE2 reveal. It basically is just PoE1.
Hanged from the neck
Like this is literally just PoE1.
Only 20 years since Kitava fell, and already corruption spreads like a plague through these shattered lands.
PoE1 with prettier animations.
Wretched malevolence lurks in the shadows. It is our calling to put it to an end. It must be done if Rayclass is to survive.
So when we even announced Path of Exile 2, we announced it as like, okay, we're going to have 2 campaigns, because at that point we decided to redo the whole campaign. We're going to have 2.
Yeah, the current reveal. Show some real gameplay. I guess this way. Yeah, slight difference.
We are faced with the end.
I think something that really shows it is when the monk is like full blasting. I don't know if this video has it. The monk from full blasting really shows
Which can add some
how crazy it is.
on low life, you can use Killing Palm to dash to them and kill them instantly. This will provide a 2 campaigns, but it's going to have a shared endgame, so that it's like effectively still the same game. And that was kind of what we announced initially in 2019. Because at that point,
Oh yeah, the one with the witch in the jungle. I don't think that was here. I think that was somewhere over here or something. I don't know.
Randomization up to 11.
There's-
The monster packs you will face in each map are totally random, and the combination of them can lead to some very interesting combat
Going Merc.
situations. There are over 400 monster types in early access, and they have a lot of varied and interesting
Yeah, they just let us
abilities.
in there.
Depending on which combinations you face, you might find some serious challenges. In order to cleanse the corruption from the area, you will need to defeat all the powerful rare and unique enemies in it. Once you have done
Yeah, I don't know. It's gonna be so weird playing this.
we're still in the mindset of like we're effectively just effectively just a giant expansion to Path of Exile that we're making here. And then even later than that, then at some point, the point when it really split into 2 games was the point when I started.
I do hope when you're like solidly in mapping, you can still like brain off, because that's gonna be rough for streaming if I have to actually pay attention all the time.
Wanting to make some much more serious changes to gameplay feel and to balance and so on. I don't think those necessarily were like it came from a specific philosophy that differed from PoE1 or anything. It was just that like in order to make these skills feel good, I feel like I need to make these changes kind of thing. And at some point, we started getting a lot of like especially from like QA, who are still mostly working on PoE1, and like some of the designers who are working exclusively on PoE1, we started to just get a lot of like, oh man, you can't really change this. Like it's changed, like because people are used to this and it won't be compatible with what people are doing. Like there was all sorts of. We just started to get a lot of like pushback on things where like, okay, it's going to break the game if you make this change. It's going to break the game if you make that change due to existing stuff, and like just various things like that. Just like lots of concern about that from inside the team. And so I started thinking about it, and I kind of just thought like, you know what, like at this point. We're effectively remaking everything, we might as well just go all the way and actually split the games apart from each other. And then as soon as we did that, it immediately was very freeing because we could suddenly make a whole bunch of decisions that I guess we would have been, like as I said, that were hard to make just because of a lot of pushback within the studio about things. And like those people, it's like, well, if it's a different game, it's like a whole different question, right? We don't have to worry about all the stuff from the past. We can make a lot of changes, and that's sort of how we ended up with that. But I mean, at the same time, there was also this idea that like we did need to make Path of Exile in order to really make Path of Exile grow to sort of a much larger audience. We really did have to like. There are a lot of people who've tried Path of Exile in the past who effectively, like
me
fell off it for whatever reason. Maybe they didn't like the combat, or maybe it was too complex, or maybe they didn't like this, that, or the other thing.
6 years straight, I've tried the game and quit.
Yeah. So it's effectively by putting a line in the sand and saying, okay, we're making a sequel now. It effectively means all those people who tried it before and maybe didn't like it are like, okay, well maybe I'll give this another shot now, because you were saying that you have made a substantially different game,
Jonathan
which obviously we have.
would be a good rapper.
So it's a time for then all of those people who tried the game in the past to come back and give it another shot. I think that is another important element of making a sequel like that. Yeah, I was just saying that's kind of how we ended up where we are.
Oh, okay, well that's good. All right. So on that, actually, because there's we're gonna get into some PoE2 questions here now, but from my perspective, I got some time playing the game. I'm a big ARPG fan. I grew up playing Diablo 2. I had a cracked version on my mom's computer. She could barely pull me off of it any chance she got, but. From my perspective, this game feels like a true
He's going to jail.
evolution in the genre. It's the pacing, the combat, the dodge mechanics. What were you guys trying to accomplish with this?
$30?
Because it does feel like an evolution. It
no
doesn't
idea.
play like any other ARPG I've played before.
So it really was an effort to make that combat feel just like just much better. And I think one of the things, so whenever we launch a Path of Exile 1 expansion, it's always very interesting to see what people say outside of the Path of Exile community. Like obviously the Path of Exile community gets all hyped about whatever the next big thing is, but it's very interesting to see other communities, because what you see there is what people usually the top comment will be like, oh,
legendary
I tried this,
drops.
the combat feels so dated and bad and all that sort of stuff.
I don't know I don't know what his main thing is. Looks like everything.
Right. Effectively, like, it's interesting to see what it is that people who don't play PoE dislike about PoE, because that's a very interesting thing to think, okay, this is the stuff that we can potentially improve in order to get it better. And like, I love action games, like I'm just a big action game player. So I just wanted to make something that to me felt like a decent action game. Like I want to kind of be able to have the best of both worlds. I want to be able to feel like an action RPG as far as like all the stats and like, interesting stuff like along the traditional like looter type game.
Build diversity,
but I also want but I also want you to be able to approach it like an action game, where you've got mechanics that you can dodge, that you can understand, like, you can see everything's got wind up, so you can see like, what's going to hit you. You can learn
Yeah, it's going to be weird having actually good combat
mechanics of bosses. Like you can effectively, I think if your character is weaker, you can overcome some degree of that in PoE2 with play skill. But then at the same time, if you're if you don't have as much play skill, you also can overcome some of that by getting more stats and doing more grinding. So ideally, you can kind of get the best of both of those worlds. But yeah, I mean, it really just comes down to, I'm an action game fan. I want us to be good on the level of an action game.
Yeah.
Nothing they've shown so far, and in all the play tests, I don't think any one button build. Granted, it's not, nobody's really tried endgame, but yeah, I don't think there's gonna be many one button builds that are anywhere close to the combos.
So actually, this lines up perfectly.
And if there is, I guarantee they will nerf them
with this. So one of the things that I noticed, actually getting hands-on time with the game, was that every encounter that I got into, regardless of whatever character I played or how far I got into the game or how much gear I got or skills or whatever it might be, every single encounter felt meaningful. And it was in a way, and I was talking to some of the other creators at the event, and I said that this doesn't feel like a second monitor game anymore. Because like Path of Exile, Diablo, these are games I got YouTube up on the second monitor, I'm watching something else, and I like, it demanded my attention at every given moment. Otherwise, I very easily could lose, even though it was fighting something that otherwise I could probably overpower. Oddly, it reminds me of Elden Ring in a lot of ways, because it's just that engaging. How did you guys manage to create that kind of feel? Was that the intention, and what kind of impact do you guys think that's going to have on the gameplay overall?
So we really do want to make sure that, especially the first time you play through the campaign, that the combat isn't. And I mean, I think that the word around here that often says we don't want the combat to feel trivialized. Like we want it actually, yeah, like as you said, we want it to feel meaningful. And this has
Yeah, I'm gonna get foot pedals for my skills.
been a really big tension point in development a lot of the time because I guess there's several reasons for that. So one of them is that if you're not expecting that as a player, that is like a very big different game feel.
Yeah.
Like it's a huge deal, right? So and like that's one of those things that I feel like it's really important that people understand is that like that yeah, like you're gonna have to concentrate on the bosses. Like the bosses shouldn't be you just walk up and kill them in 5 seconds. You need to like observe the mechanics and engage with them and like understand them and like like it might take you a couple of deaths before you kill a boss. That kind of thing. And I think that I think from a designer's perspective as well, you kind of want like you put all this effort into designing a boss. Like you don't want a player to just walk in and be like, oh yeah, I just killed it in 2 seconds. Like nothing you did mattered. You know what I mean? Like so on that level, we just want the combat to feel like it matters. But at the same time, you do need a feeling of progression through the game, and you do need to make sure that at some point you get to the point where you feel much more powerful than the content.
Dance pad
Now, I
under
think
your
the difference
chair.
is with PoE 2 versus 1 is that the point where you reach that is a bit later than it was in PoE 1. And the other thing as well is that people have so much knowledge of PoE 1 at this point that they can reach that trivialization point very, very quickly right from the start of the game. Like obviously we've added like lots of content over the years and all sorts of stuff like that. So it's kind of gotten to the point now where PoE 1 combat really just doesn't kind of like matter very much overall, unfortunately. So yeah, we were trying to get back to a situation where the combat wasn't trivialized. But then once again, there's a lot of tension, right? Like as we are doing testing on closed betas and so on, you definitely get a cohort of people who are like, oh, effectively, ultimately they're finding the game too hard, right, for their level of concentration that they want to put into it. And so we really have to do a fine line here. And so ideally what we can achieve is that if you are finding something too hard, you can go and grind, you can get a level of power from what you're
Yeah, but PoE 1's already like that.
From the stuff that you look around the world, get more stuff and sort of come back, and that's like a thing that you can do. But ideally, we're in a situation where the amount of that you do kind of depends on how hard you're finding the content. So ideally you kind of like do side content to the point where you reach the level of difficulty with the combat that you feel like you need to reach before you're feeling comfortable.
I got you. Okay.
It was actually a realization that we had relatively recently, because there was actually an interesting thing. You mentioned Elden Ring. There's actually an interesting thing I noticed with Elden Ring, which is that if I'm playing Elden Ring and I try to kill a boss and I can't kill it, then what I do is I just go and do some random side content until I feel powerful enough to come back. And that was something that Path of Exile 2 players in the closed betas were not doing. And I was kind of like, Jesus Christ, it's a fly. Sorry. That was something that Path of Exile 2 players in the closed betas weren't doing. And I was kind of, well, why is this? Like, why is it that people just slam their face against a boss again and again and again in PoE 2?
That's what people do. That is just what people do.
Where in a game like Elden Ring, you'd go off and you'd...
No, they don't. You didn't know. That's not even true for Elden Ring.
And you would go do something else. And the thing that I realized is that in Elden Ring, you have a map that invites you to the idea that there's other stuff out there that you could find, and that there's all sorts of stuff on there. And you kind of realize, oh, you know what? There's other stuff I could be doing.
Okay, I do it. I stay reasonably leveled in Elden Ring on purpose though, because the game's too easy if you go do that stuff.
I'm not enjoying this. And Path of Exile 2, initially, the map didn't really kind of bring across any of that. So recently what we decided to do is make sure that on the map there's like icons for all of the like side content and little extra things that we've put around the area, so that when you open that map you kind of feel like, oh, there's so much stuff here that I could be doing. And so then it kind of just reminds you of the fact that if you're having trouble with a boss, you're like, okay, well, you know what? I'm just going to go off and do something else. And if you do that, you will get meaningful upgrades because we've also made sure that all of that content has interesting, like fixed drops or just like little things that they can do that will give you a meaningful upgrade that will potentially make you stronger to allow you to defeat that boss. So that was something that we, it's not an obvious connection between like, you know, how come people are finding bosses frustrating to like being, oh, we need to improve the map. But you know, like that ended up, I sort of realized that like, you know, why is it different between these different games? And I think that was very important. So adding that has actually improved the experience, I think, quite a lot.
Yeah.
Jesus,
You get
fly. What? Just go away.
That fly is eating good. It's huge.
Oh,
That thing
man.
is huge.
It's actually it's so crazy that you say that about the map because the wild thing is I was thinking about it while I was actually playing the game because I had gotten to a boss
The
that
fly wants to be interviewed.
absolutely handled me, and then part of me was sitting there thinking to myself, I'm like, I can beat this by skill, right? Like I can just pay attention, learn the mechanics, dodge all the mechanics, and do my best not to get hit, and beat the boss that way. And then I opened the map and I saw there was like a bunch of mini bosses that I hadn't even touched yet. And I was like, well, let's go ahead and go around here. I'll probably get some skill gems or some uncut, you know, support gems off of them, be able to build something out, maybe find some better equipment or whatever, and then come back a little bit later. I did that. Sure enough, got better support gems, got better higher end skill gems and some better equipment, came back, handled the boss. It was still tough. I'm not going to say like I didn't have to try anymore. I still had to try. But you know, it felt a little bit more measured because I was actually dealing enough damage to take it down within a realistic amount of time, right? And
well, I'm really glad to hear that worked because that was my thesis for how we were going to fix this problem.
Yeah.
And
It's back.
yeah, I'm really glad to hear that worked. But the other thing
It's
as well
trying
is,
to. It's like flying in his mouth, dude.
because I was
Look at dude. It's trying to get in.
actually dealing enough damage to take it down within a realistic
The Blizzard
amount
agent.
of time.
Where is it?
Right.
Did I not go back far enough?
And
well, I'm really glad to hear that worked. That was my thesis for how we were going to fix this problem.
Yeah.
There it is.
Like that was my thesis.
Look at dude. It's like trying to get in his mouth. Dude's beelining for it. You see that? Like bounced off him.
This problem.
Yeah.
And, you know. Yeah, I'm really glad to hear that worked. But
Trying to fly up his nose.
the other thing as well.
Oh,
yeah.
Go away.
Somebody get a fly swatter.
Oh shit! I shouldn't have. That was pretty good. That's gonna be good in 0.25.
Somebody get a fly swatter.
Smelling here.
It's on him. It's right there. Or is that no? That's part of his. Never mind. That's part of his thing. Part of his jacket.
Last time you left the office, man.
Oh no, it wasn't, dude. He was holding on. He was holding on, dude. That was it.
Okay. So
I like to imagine this happening during the reveal.
um
Oh my god, dude. It is not.
anyway, what was I saying?
He is relentless.
So yeah, so the other thing as well though is it really did force us to
Holy shit, dude.
create a lot more of that
Fucking
side content throughout the game
relentless.
as well. And I think that really helped because having all those like kind of little interesting encounters has just made the game feel so much more alive.
I'm
You know,
pretty
like
sure the
there's
leech,
just
they've
there
only
was tons
shown
of
for
cases where we
Fizz
did
so
things like we
far.
would so it's funny because like so we've got all these bosses in the game, there's like tons of them everywhere, but then we also have things that I guess like there's still sort of bosses. I think if you look
If you fail a map in PoE2, you get attacked by a giant fly.
at a lot of games, you would still consider them to be bosses. But effectively, they're like hard-coded rare monsters that have specific abilities. And a lot of the time, what we've done is we've taken things from like later in the game and moved them earlier to use them as like a boss in that sort of area, things like that. So, for example, I don't know if in the forest you found that witch in the witch's hut.
Yes.
Was that a thing you found?
Yeah,
You did.
yeah.
All right.
That's where
So
I got some like leveled up potions or flasks.
yeah, exactly. So that witch actually comes from Act 5. We that was just one of the regular monsters from Act 5. We took it down. We added this like frost breath ability.
Yeah.
And then like you know added a little bit of stuff around like you know you walk in and there's the cauldron and then she disappears and goes behind you and like you know a few things like that. And it's like really quickly we were able to create a little encounter like that. And if you're in Act 1, a random Act 5 regular monster feels like a boss to you.
Yeah.
So that's like just like a nice way to just add little bits of content. Like we've kind of done little things like that all over the place, just like little touches that add you know that just make the game world feel a lot more alive and allow us to drop specific items. So yeah, that one once again that one's designed to specifically give you potions. But actually, there's another interesting one with that one, which is that I don't know if you found in the previous area there was a little camp with some zombies that drops a skill gem. You might have missed it.
Yeah, no, I got it.
Okay, so basically, so if you miss that one, then the reward that you would have gotten from that one will also drop from the witch in the next area.
Oh, okay, all right.
So effectively, what this means is kind of like a catch-up account where we can effectively say, okay, there's all this random optional stuff around, but if you miss some of it, then we can forward some of those drops on to a later point, so that we can still sort of make sure that at the beginning you sort of have a reasonable. Like we want to try. What we're trying to do there is we're trying to make sure that the bottom of you know the people who are the most unlucky effectively still have a reasonable experience. So that's the kind of thing that we can do to there's like little tricks like that we can do to make that more interesting.
That's incredibly smart, and it worked. So there you go. I'm happy your plan worked there. So actually, along with like missing content and stuff like that, I am the quintessential new player for Path of Exile. I've tried the game like 6 times over the last 6 years. I fell off every single time. It wasn't until Settlers of Kalgur that finally got me, mostly because I could respec using gold.
Right.
That's really what it was. I couldn't tell you how many times I had bricked a character just because I couldn't figure out how to build. I get like to the end of the campaign or near the end of the campaign and just get smashed. You guys have made a lot of changes that have made the game far more accessible. It's obvious that you're trying to aim this towards newer players. How do you guys manage to balance something that is going to be good for new players while still keeping the game the same for those hardcore players that they've come to love?
His friends call him
Exile.
John.
Yeah, so it really comes down to trying to remove what's called incidental complexity. So effectively, you have what you might call necessary complexity, which is effectively in order to get the depth that you want, there's a certain amount of complexity you need to be able to make the system work at all. But then also you have incidental complexity, which is effectively things that are complicated where simplifying them doesn't change the depth of the system at all. And a great example of that is the way that skill gems work, where previously skill gems were on items. It meant that every time you upgraded an item, you had to worry about your skill gems. That didn't change anything about the options that you had for what.
But is that really complexity?
Skill gems or anything like that. So effectively, I would class that as incidental complexity because it's something that made the game more complicated, but it didn't change anything about what you could actually achieve in the system in terms of like how you like what the ultimate way that you know the combos you can do, anything about how you build a character. All it did was just get in the way. So effectively what we're trying to do is just remove all that stuff that's getting in the way, that's not making the game deeper, while keeping all the stuff that is necessary to make the game interesting and have interesting depth. So if we can do that, then I think that we will have something which new players are going to find a lot more friendly. So yeah, like the skill system being a great example. I mean, things like making respecs easier and gold and stuff like that, like that stuff all really helps. There's just a lot of these things, and really, like what we were doing before.
Yeah, it's a complex
some of that stuff just wasn't really
guy.
necessary. It was not improving the game to do it that way. So the answer there is like, yeah, effectively, yeah, I believe that you can have it both ways, but at the same time, like, I never want to make a decision that's going to make the game less deep. And it's very interesting because, like, obviously that can be
It's probably the most enjoyable interview so far.
that can be something that can mean different things to different people. So, like,
Personally, I'm a big fan of
here's
The
an interesting one that
Fly.
was like a one recently that we changed, which was that we changed from 5 flasks down to from having 5 flask slots that you could do whatever you wanted with, to having just a life slot and a mana flask slot. And
Getting rid
you
of the
could look at
piano
that.
keys.
Yeah, exactly. So you could look
Yeah.
at that. Obviously, we're trying to solve a real problem because that one actually came out of the fact that whenever I was actually watching new players play, the thing that they would screw up the most was using flasks. Like, they would press the wrong button, they'd do one that was empty. There's also
The flies waiting to
stuff that they'd be
strike.
doing there that just wasn't that was causing them to die. And I was like, at the same time, you've also got the whole flask piano thing, which is like, not great. And but the thing is, when we first said, okay, well, what if we just had one mana and one life slot? The first reaction to that is, oh, you're simplifying the game, you're dumbing it down, this kind of thing. Like, this is something that we have to be worried about. So then it's like, okay, well, how can we have a system where we can bring back some of the interesting build choices that you felt like you had before, while not bringing back all of the annoying garbage that people had to do and like all the stuff that was making new players fail.
Yeah, the physical actually having to use the potions part.
Yeah, exactly. So that's when we thought about, okay, well, what do people really want the variability of their flasks to be able to achieve? And the answer is they want solutions.
I wonder, the charms, if you looked at how many charges they took, it was kind of insane. I wonder if you're going to end up being like, they'll get frozen occasionally. As in current PoE, you like never get frozen. I don't think you can get like full ailment immunity. I don't think you can control it now.
Solutions to things like getting frozen and like fire, like burning and this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I don't think you can get any like ailment immunity stats other than charms or whatever.
They generally using those flask slots for things that aren't even life and mana. So then we're like, okay, so we're going to add this new system called charms, and they automatically trigger, and they still give you some interesting build choices, but they don't require the
I
physical
don't think there's
dexterity of having to.
Pantheon. Instead, there's just all the random bonuses from the random bosses. But I'll burb. I'm back. NDA, so what you do is you take it and then you flip a coin and then you sign it based on what the coin says. They're not rigged, watch, I'll win. Ooh, close.
You know, of having to hit all these different buttons all the time and knowing which one to press. And so like that's another great example of like, okay, we can do something which is like we've got a way to keep the depth, but we've also got a way to simplify things down and make things easier. And along the way, I actually think it actually
I mean, on the scale of bad, that one's pretty low, but
improved some things about build choices too, because the a flask with the mods on flasks are much more important to think about choosing between when you've only got one flask of each type. Like if you've got 5 flasks, then the
only
mods kind of
insults
fade into
allowed.
irrelevance because it's like,
Yeah.
well, who cares? I'll just make it blue, and whatever mods I get, I don't really care. And like, sure, maybe there's a couple that people seek, you know, like instant healing and that kind of thing. But now when it's like you've
Blood
got one life
mage
flask, it's like, okay, you really
looks
care
big.
about what mods those are, and like there are different choices now about like what am I prioritizing here about
Thanks for the
about
gift
what I
sub
want in
night.
that flask. So I think that actually improved depth in some ways as well. So that's just kind of a long rant about a very specific system there
Yeah.
to give you a kind of example. But effectively, that's the kind of design process we go through when we're thinking about like how can we improve things for new users without actually breaking any, like removing any depth for high-end players while still having all these build choices that are going to matter.
So I think that's really smart because the thing is that looking at the
Thanks for
charm
38,
system
you
for the
resub
potions
cat.
specifically is that you guys not only simplified it, but then you actually ended up creating more depth in a system simultaneously. So not only did you make it more accessible for a newer player, but also now more seasoned players have to balance, okay, well, I'm going to be doing this. I want to make sure that I have fire resist, or I want to make sure that I have frost resist.
Dude, the PC building stream is gonna be crazy.
Or whatever it is, and I have to fill whatever gaps with my build that I have. Well, that's how I'm going to, use my charms. Now they're hunting for charms, or they have charms that are filling up their
the unreal backseating. Unreal. It's going to be unfucking real. What do you think would have worse or more backseating? Like a workout stream or building a PC? I feel like both are really gonna be like they'd both be really bad. I don't know. I feel like there's not that many. Like, what could you really backseat on PC? Able management? Oh, that's not gonna happen.
their stash tabs and whatnot, and I think that's really smart.
No, I'm not gonna do a workout stream.
That's smart. I like that a lot. So as
I was just
one
an
of my,
example.
Like, new player things is that when I always came back in to try Path of Exile again, obviously every single time it was around a new league mechanic. And this last time that I got through, the Sellers of Kalgur was very easy to kind of get used to. It's something similar you've seen in a lot of other games.
I don't work out. I need to start soon. I'm hitting the age. I said by the time I hit 57, I needed to start working out.
Games and whatnot, so it was pretty familiar to me.
And I'm almost there.
But when I actually finally got to the end game for the first time, got to maps and everything like that, I was yet again lost, and my only my only solution was like 2 or 3 hour guides from Zizrain or somebody like that, right? And I'm like, it's not really what I wanted to do. I try to play games as blind as.
Let me see if I can find this I'm gonna find this picture of the computer that I fucked up. Well, I didn't fuck it up, it's fine. Oh yeah, here it is, wait. Hmm. Oh, I found some pictures. I thought I took a video of it, but
As I can.
Mhm.
And I was wondering, when it comes to the end game, do you guys have any plans to maybe nudge new players into the direction of maybe end game solutions that are best for them? Or
Right.
are there ways for players to be able to discover that?
So I think that the end game, just the core system in PoE 2 is a bit more understandable and discoverable. And the way you can kind of see, so we've got the map that sort of shows you what you can find, and so it really feels like you get more of a sense of discovery, and you kind of slowly get
oh, I'm
introduced to the different
gonna
mechanics. Like you're going to start finding
gotta
those sort of extra
upload
league
this.
mechanics. Like you're going to see them on the map before you get to them. You're going to be like, oh, what's this? You go there, you try it out, this kind of thing. Like you're not just going to randomly run into like 10 different weird mechanics that you've never heard of,
It's
like
my old
right from
phone.
the
It's
get-go.
slow.
So effectively, that allows us to kind of more slowly introduce those things, and all of those things I think have a much more considered ramp about how you get into them and how they go forward. We can effectively make sure that there's tutorialization for them at the point where you encounter them for the first time. There's just a lot more that we can do
It is
around
blowing
that.
up. It is
So I think
blowing
the
up
system
with
itself is just a
thousands
bit more
of
amenable
things that
to
have happened since
making
the
that
last
ramp
time
into the end
I
game
turned
a
this
little bit
phone
easier.
on. Jesus
But
Christ.
ultimately the end game is
Holy
where things the
shit.
complexity does start to ramp up a little bit.
Yeah.
Like that is something that is definitely just going to be the case. That's where you start to because like especially as we add more and more content to it, that's where you're going to start to get all of these things sort of coming in. But as I said, there's a bit more of a consideration to just like how the ramp up works. Like I think the other thing as well is that if you just want to concentrate on one mechanic as well, that's something that you can do very easily in PoE 2. You can do that in PoE 1 as well,
Yeah.
but like the way that you do that, I think, is a little bit more obvious in PoE 2 as well, with the way we've got the tablets and the towers and stuff like that. Like I think that the notion of like, okay, I'm gonna just do breaches and I'm gonna like try and seek this out. I think that's a bit more obvious too. So and then also the progression systems for all of them.
Well, you can use any skill on Monk. So you can use a Fizz skill.
The different trees, that kind of also I think just splits the complexity out from it, into separate areas. So you don't have to like worry too much about the ones that you're not doing right now. So I think that sort of helps as well. So I'm hoping that will improve things. But I must say that the end game is where we've had the least amount of closed beta testing stuff done.
Yeah.
It's only recently that we're able to get people testing that at all, and so that means that we've got the least information about how new players react to that. That I think is going to be something that we'll find out more as we go into early access. Honestly, like it's a sort of it's very hard to get people in like a 1 week beta test to be able to get all the way to end game and like engage with that. And the people who get there are going to be your most hardcore users anyway. So there's like that'll be very interesting to see how new users react to that end game system.
Yeah, for the end game stuff, at least what I saw from like the presentations,
I'm almost
and whatnot,
there.
I'll immediately say I think the map system in general is like light years ahead of what it is for PoE 1. It's so much more like easy to read and understand and see what's going on than it is in Path of Exile 1. And especially like the more like simplified skill tree for the maps as well. I think that helps out quite a lot. Path of Exile seasons have always seen a lot of players come back. It seems that it's always an actual event, momentous occasion. There's a ton of people that file in. You got a bunch of people streaming it on Twitch. What do you guys think is the key to maintaining that long-term engagement that you guys see with Path of Exile?
So I think there's a few elements. So one of them is the thing that I already mentioned before about the full economic reset being really important. But the next one is that our just general view on maintaining a game, and I think this is something that the industry is more generally coming towards now, but only in the more recent years, is coming to the understanding that you don't want to keep players around forever. You want to give players a good experience that they're going to enjoy for like a few weeks, a month, maybe 6 weeks, something like that. Like some amount of time that's like bounded, and then you're happy to see them go to play other things, and then they, not in the knowledge that they're going to come
Play
back again
other
later.
things? What does that mean?
So like you don't have to hang on to players forever, and I think that mindset is something we've had for quite a long time, and it's something that just I think just much better for the long term. Like there was a period when the MMOs were big where it's like everyone was trying to like hang on to players for the longest amount of time. They were all subscription models, so it was like the interest was keeping people around forever, and
I think we
It
all
takes a
played
while for
WoW.
that kind of yeah. It takes a while for that mindset to kind of go away.
Okay, I got
And
it.
it's sort of very interesting to see as well that and this is kind of a weird maybe a weird connection, but in the mobile world, for some reason I feel like they still treat players very much this way, that it's all about, like, they want to try and keep players forever. And as I said, I think that it's kind of something that is ultimately self-defeating, because players will just burn out. Like, you really would much rather give them a satisfying experience than like, okay, you know what, I'm done with this.
But they've added stuff like that into PoE1, like the Kirak town encouraging you to log in, the Kirak, okay, not Kirak town, but the town, and the Kirak Pass and stuff like that. Anyway, so this is from building my current stream PC. I mean, it wasn't originally meant for stream, but yeah, I built it on carpet, and then my GPU wouldn't fit in the slot, like the fan. There was no shield over the fan, so what was happening is the fan was getting stuck on this. Previously, it was a PCIe slot, but I took a screwdriver and I hacked it off so the fan could fit. It worked fine. It worked fine. I built it on cart. It is impossible to fuck a PC up. It is impossible to fuck it up. Genuinely impossible. Just wait till you see when I do it. I build it on stream. This is just a bonus picture.
But I'm going to come back again later. So I mean, that's like one really important thing, I think, for sure.
So, do you guys think that your monetization has something to do with that? Because, like, you guys have a very player first approach to your monetization.
That sat on my desk for a long time.
Especially in the free to play realm, you guys are a rare breed, to say the least. How much of an impact do you think that has on it?
I mean, I definitely think that comes a lot to sort of player trust. Like by
Oak,
not
that
being
sat on my
aggressive with
desk
monetization,
for
by
a
making sure that
really
we,
long time.
everyone what we do feels fair.
Months at least.
I think that it just means that players trust us, and they're much more likely to spend money just on the idea that I'm supporting the game that I'm enjoying playing.
Oh, I got it. This is a good Twitter post. When did Settlers start? Was it like July 26th or something? PoE 3.25 start date. July 26th. July 28th? 26th. Tell me that wouldn't be a good build name, Illuvium. Like, this build right here? Menstrual Blast. It's perfect.
In covering the screen in blood, covering our enemies in blood, making sure they go under the ground, 6 feet under that is, permanently, within seconds.
Yeah, look, I'm sure there are things that we could do that would like juice our monetization significantly beyond what we're doing now. But we wouldn't enjoy doing those things. And I think that ultimately be self-defeating. You know, it's much better to just do what we do. And honestly, like,
You try the new Pro Pal flavors,
monetization is
they're
something that
good.
like it's not our first thought when we're coming to design things. Like our first thought is about designing the game, and then monetization really is like, okay, like obviously we want to make some cool stuff there. But it's like really the first thing is like first make a good game, and then if the game is good enough, the hope
You're
is
gonna
that
make me
players will
cry.
then want to support you.
Yeah.
The hope is that players will want to support you in what you're doing. So yeah, I mean that's kind of always been our view on it. And you know, it's funny even at the start. So we started the game in 2006, like working on it, and at that time, free to play was really not a thing in the Western world. And the reason why we chose that is because we kind of thought, you know, well, we're not some big studio, we're just some random dudes in New Zealand, you know. Like if I don't think we can even get people to buy our game, and like how would we even distribute it, and like all this stuff. Like we were like we couldn't even do this. So free to play felt like a way for us to be able to actually get an audience. But then the only examples that we had were all of the pay to win things that were going on in Asia at the time. So we were like, well, obviously
at the
nobody
time.
in the yeah, we were like nobody in the West would
Yeah.
ever accept anything that was pay to win. Clearly,
Yeah.
right? That's clearly not okay. It's kind of what we were thinking about at the time. So we were like, well, so obviously we need to do all of this cosmetic stuff that we do. So that was kind of like our thinking back then. And it's funny because it turned out that actually Western gamers will accept pay to win in a lot of cases. There are like a bunch of pay to win games that are successful in the West after all.
Yeah.
But our whole thesis at the time was like, you know, nobody would accept this. I mean, we wouldn't accept it, right? As players, like that's what we were thinking. So therefore, you know, that was the monetization model that we picked. Yeah, that was our thinking.
I think that in a lot of ways that the player first approach, not going the pay to win approach and things like that you've seen with many other games. Well, there have been some successful ones that are out there. I think especially recently, you know, I'm not going to name any names or anything like that, but there's a lot of live service games that have come out that did lean on those pay to win systems, or they were a little bit too aggressive with their monetization. Maybe it's they monetize too many things, maybe they
Gamer
price
subs
things too
roast.
high or whatever it might be. Especially when there's games that are like parallels of each other, right? You'll have two games that are basically like the same thing, but one is, you know, way more expensive to play than the other one. I think that it builds a lot of customer loyalty more than anything else. And how do you think?
Bro, fuck customer loyalty. All you got to do is release one game and you're good for 40 years.
That loyalty like really plays into like the longevity of your game? Because like I said, I've seen a lot of these games basically come out and then fizzle out really quickly because of their monetization.
I mean, it absolutely does factor
No,
into
they
it.
fizzle out because
No
they're
doubt
not
that it
good
does.
games.
But I mean, you still at the end of the day have to make a good product, right? Like like the gameplay itself is king.
Yeah.
And I would say that the main thing you don't want is the monetization to be getting in the way of that. And monetization really can do that because the moment that you monetize something, the game designers are influenced by the existence of that thing. Like if you're selling a certain thing, like even if you don't even realize that you're doing it, you're going to be making game design decisions around making it so that people actually, you know, buy that.
I think
So,
battle passes are probably the best example of that, where they like they're curbing all of the gameplay around how you progress a battle pass and things like that.
Right. So yeah, like that's why you've got to be so careful what you decide to monetize because it will affect what you do with other things, and I think that's almost inevitable to an extent that yeah, like it's like it is so dangerous to do that stuff because yeah, it just affects you so much. And I actually think there's a thing that in my mind is connected by the way here that it's not technically the same thing, but you know how a lot of live service games will have like, oh, like play this weekend and get double drops and play this weekend and get 2 times experience and this kind of like stuff like that. Like that stuff, I think, really undermines the integrity of the game very significantly in the long term.
I mean, what game would ever do that? That's got to be some kind of like mobile game or something. No PC game, let alone an ARPG, would never do that.
Like that stuff, like sure, that weekend a bunch of people will turn up, but then I feel like then you're like when you don't have that, now you're much less likely to play. And so then you get into this
Yeah,
death
no
spiral of like, okay, well,
Diablo-like
the only time
games
people turn up
anyways.
is when you start turning on double experience weekends. And so it's like now that's what the game is. And it's like you've kind of compromised the whole thing. So it's like even just that like stuff, that's not even really to do with monetization even. It's just like another thing where it's like it's an outside element outside of the gameplay.
You're using marketing to push gameplay.
Yeah, that shouldn't be there. And I really hate that stuff. And like, I mean, you like people will all the time suggest this kind of stuff, right? Like, and you get this with like third-party publishers as well, where it's like you'll be publishing in a market and they're like, oh, we want to be able to run an event where blah blah blah, and I'm like, no, we just will not do it. Like in the long term, it just breaks things. Like, and they'll say, look, when we do it in this game, we get so much more players, and it's like, well, yeah, you do that weekend, but you know, like it's just not good in the long term. So we never do that stuff, and I think that it's once again another one of those things that in the long term I think you is much better for the health of the game.
I think that like generosity is always a good thing to have in games, and maybe it's not like double XP weekends or anything like that, because obviously I wholeheartedly agree with you that it has a negative impact more than a positive impact in a lot of cases. You know, I brought up like Warframe like earlier. Every single day you log into Warframe, there's a reward that you get, no matter I think how long you play the game, and sometimes that reward could be like a 75% off of the you know, premium currency for the game or something like that. So players always feel rewarded for logging in all the time. So, you know, I think there's different ways to go about it, but yeah, for sure, that's it's definitely not the way.
You log in. Yeah, you can spend money right now for less money.
You know, one thing that I definitely wanted to make sure to bring up as well is I'll be real, the carrying over all microtransactions from PoE 1 to PoE 2 is unheard of. It is most companies would probably see this as an opportunity to be able to double dip, to be able to, you know, have their existing audience pay for all new things all over again, start over fresh in an entirely different microtransaction ecosystem. What was your guys' motivation to, you know, what a lot of companies would probably look at as throw away all that money?
So I think there's like 3 or maybe even 4 sort of things going on here. So one of them is having started from a position of this is an expansion to Path of Exile 1 certainly was part of the like part of the initial sort of thinking there. But the other thing as well is that okay, so let's think about sequels to live service games that have existed. Now, every time that people have done sequels to live service games, and there's not like that many of them.
No.
A lot of the time, the sequels end up doing worse than the original game, and you have to go back a little bit for some of these. But effectively, like it's not always the case that the sequels do better. But what had been the case before for all the sequels to live service games was that the original game effectively took a back seat and no longer received any development, and effectively, you know, was dead. And we're like, well, why do that, right? Like, why do that when we have something that there is an audience for that people love?
You're playing it today, right?
So I'm like, right. So I'm like, okay, well, in order, like, when you're a game designer, you think a lot in terms of incentives, right? It's like, okay, like, because like just as a general mindset as a game designer, you're like, okay, because every time you design anything, you're like, okay, what are the incentives for the player? What's this? I'm also thinking about like, what are the incentives that we as a company will have, depending on how we structure this. So I'm like, okay, if we make sure that the microtransactions span across both games, that means that as a company, we will have an incentive to make sure that Path of Exile 1 continues to receive content, because we will still be getting monetization from that. Because the feeling that players will have is that PoE 1 is still getting, because PoE 1 will still be getting monetization because of the fact that all that stuff goes back as well as forwards. That means that we'll always be incentivized to support it. So effectively, I wanted to like build into what like the company's what the company is doing, a way to incentivize us to do the right thing here. And so that's like part of the reason why we did it that way. But there's one other point as well I want to make, which is that when you do run a live service game, you kind of realize that like the stuff, I mean, look, the stuff that's selling is the new stuff. And I don't think that like reselling a bunch of stuff from the past to everyone again is necessarily even going to make that much money anyway. It's like, sure, I mean, there's stash tabs and stuff, and that would have been like a short-term injection of cash probably if we'd done that. But really, in the long term, there's 2 things that are going to give us more money. One of them is like, you know, getting new players. And those new players won't have paid us any money before, so they've got nothing to carry over. And the second thing is, you know, keeping people interested in playing the game over and over again through all the different leagues, and thus, you know, buying supporter packs through each of those times as well. and people having all their old stuff carry over really doesn't matter for those things, right? Like if our goal is long-term success of PoE 2 and 1, then it really, we can make this, and I don't think it should really hurt us at all in the long term. So I think just like for several reasons, it was the right move.
Yeah, but doesn't he know running a company is all about the short-term benefits these days? At the what's the word? The detriment to the future? Doesn't he know short-term profits and then you run your company to the ground so you can just get like one big boost or something? Isn't that how it works?
To do, and obviously players are very happy about it as well. It makes the people who played the game before feel valued, and like we're not just going to throw this stuff in the garbage whenever we decide to do something new, which I think is very important. There's that feeling of like we actually care about all that stuff that we sold.
Yeah, he needs to go get his MBA.
You before, like, so I think that all of that stuff combined really does just make for, to me, a no-brainer decision. So this wasn't a difficult decision at all. It was something that was very obvious to us right from the point when we decided to make PoE 2, and so I guess that's the sort of our thinking behind it.
Yeah, no, I think it's great. My stash tabs, thank you, by the way. But it's just it's an interesting direction to take. But I wholeheartedly agree with you that it seems like a no-brainer decision to just go ahead and transfer things between the two, because I think in a lot of cases for like the existing PoE audience, you're going to have people that are going to play both.
For sure.
Right? Like they're going to go back and forth between the two of them, and they're going to spend money on both of them. Sure. And again, I think this kind of goes back into this like conversation of like, when you treat players like that, when you make things so accessible, when you don't make a situation where it looks like you're just trying to take money from them at every given turn, I think it builds a relationship in which they don't feel like they need to spend money. They feel like they want to. Like they want to support you. And I think that's something that's really important. This ties into like a conversation. This is more of like a philosophical thing on my part, but over the last couple of years, I've noticed that there's been a trend lately where I think that a lot of companies are trying to either strike a balance or try to trend in the direction of like younger audiences and different, people like to say the mythical modern audience or something like that. And one of the things that I've noticed is that like great games just seem to land well, right? Like Elden Ring.
What games are outside of like the only games I can think of is like I can't think of a game that does that. Cyberpunk is marketed towards young audience? Why? But COD's always been a baby game. Like I can't think of a game that's not like a baby game that,
Is a game that's played by ages probably 13 to like, I don't know, probably folks in their 70s have played Elden Ring. Like it really does cover that massive group of people. And I think that in a lot of cases the industry is kind of losing sight of how like older players are not aging out of video games like they would in other industries.
Nintendo's made like,
so like
I can't think of like companies doing it where it wasn't just a baby game to begin with or something. Like I can't think of a company pivoting or anything.
Like they have to target their games towards something else. And I noticed like the first thing that caught me off guard was when I logged into Path of Exile, and the first thing that happens is all of the other characters get hung.
Actually, no, maybe, I mean, I guess I don't know. I guess Diablo 3 kind of did it. I guess like Fortnite and Diablo 3. I don't know. I feel like it's not a super common thing at all.
So it's like it's not a game that immediately wants to treat you like a child. Like it has its
Right.
tone. It knows
Dota
what its
did it.
universe
Dude, babies don't understand Dota. They're too stupid.
is and what its themes are. How do you think you strike
Dota is like Dota is probably like an older age group than PoE, and PoE is really old.
that middle
I don't think there's anybody under the age of 30 that's played Dota.
ground, or do you think it's necessary to strike a middle ground with an audience?
Well, at the end of the day, what we're doing is making a game that we enjoy, right? Like we're making a game that we think is cool. And I think the danger really comes when you try to make a game for an audience that you're not part of. Like I think that's where you start to make things that appeal to nobody. Because you probably the people you're trying to make a game for that aren't you feel patronized by whatever it is you're doing.
There's a lot of examples of that.
Yeah, and you don't, and also you don't, once again, you just don't know what it is they want. Like the only person that I know, like the person I know the most, what they want is myself, right?
Yeah.
Like I know exactly what I'm looking for in a game, and so and also
A ban from Rack stream for saying break open the box. Does he ban a lot of people?
so like a lot of
Did he didn't want to catch the fire that Towley was getting?
the people on the team as well, like like the people on the development team really need to like what it is they're making. So, as I said, we're making a game for ourselves primarily, and I think if we do that, that we will find an audience of people who are like us, who enjoy this kind of thing. And yeah, we do.
I think that's the whole. I think what a good game comes down to is if it's developed with a game the developers actually want to play. I think that is like literally all a good game comes down to. That's it.
Enjoy, like darker.
Not budget, not anything else. It's if the devs themselves are making the game they want to play.
Themes and like doing, like fun stuff, like just.
Well, and it also has to be good, but
Honestly, it's just really fun to do this stuff. The most fun that our artists have are when they're like making things that are more extreme. Like you probably, I guess you probably didn't. Oh no, we did. We show you in that presentation the Black Chambers that has all the crazy body horror stuff, and it's like they had so much fun. Just like, oh yeah, what do we get this guy? Just like pull his intestines around a crate, like around a gear train, like like stuff like that. They're just like and like slicing the guy in half vertically.
The minute I saw like the cheese grater machine, I was like, thank God.
So it's like there's a smile on the artist's face when they're designing stuff like that. So it's like, and if they're enjoying it, then the players will enjoy it. So like I think that's really what it comes down to. Just target yourself, like make stuff that you think is cool, and then so long as there's enough other people like you out there, then you'll get a big audience.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see here. These are we're into the bonus round here. Here we go. Path of Exile. Oh, this is a really good one. So obviously, long-standing game. There's a lot of narrative and story elements from Path of Exile 1.
Not a
lot
story
of world building
question.
that's very pivotal to this game. It's picking up off of the events of Path of Exile,
What?
obviously. How do you guys approach storytelling and in a way to keep players invested, but also, with Path of Exile 2 coming out, how are you guys going to, onboard those new players that maybe won't go play Path of Exile 1?
So as a starting point,
Never.
like you really can play through PoE 2 and understand the story without knowing anything about PoE 1. Like it is the same world. There are going to be some characters to repeat, that kind of thing. Like if you've played PoE 1, you know, there's a lot of stuff there for you. But we do have to make sure that the story is kind of feels engaging to someone who just didn't experience it before. I think one of the things that's really interesting with storytelling in an action RPG is that you have to be really careful not to be overbearing. Like there are cases where like we expect people to play through the game lots of times, right? And so like if you have a lot of like you know, so the quintessential thing that a lot of games do, most games do, is they'll detach the camera from the play, you know, from the play.
I feel like I wouldn't be good at an interview because usually I don't little tiny tidbits of information I usually don't really give a shit about. And that's like all that ever comes out of interviews.
Position, you know,
Yeah.
and they'll like do things like you talk to an NPC and it comes down and you've got stuff like that, right? And I think for a game that you play through one time, that stuff is very effective and works well, and it does help with engagement in the story.
Okay,
And
my
like
interview, I would just ask over and over again, have you fixed 7-second DCs? That would just be, I just ask that question over and over again.
that's a good thing. But the moment that you do that, when you've got a campaign that you want people to be able to like run through quickly, just taking the camera away from where it is and putting it somewhere else immediately makes it feel like a chore to engage with all of those NPCs and everything. Like in PoE 1, if you want to, you can burn through like all of that story and quest stuff like very, very easily. And so we're kind of trying to make sure that in PoE 2, like we had this sort of difficult challenge of like, we want people to care about the story more than they did in PoE 1, but we also don't want to have that feeling of like, oh, you like made the campaign this annoying process to have to go through. I think that is something that some of the games have run into, and so then they start to think, oh, you know, we need ways to skip it, and like it drives all of that stuff, right? Like we want we want to try and do both. So I think that what we've really tried to do is to add more of that story stuff through the campaign in ways that are both not annoying but do sort of allow you to experience stuff without having to stop your gameplay. So you've got things like as you're walking through areas, you know, like sometimes
That is a good point.
that you can click on that like will play as you you know as you run through and stuff like that. We've also made the like more, I guess, like animated story moments that you sort of get to experience without actually having to stop running around. You know, like you've got things like boss intros and things like that. Like you get a moment to like tell a bit of a story as the boss is coming out. You know, with a few lines of dialogue that can really you know like make like sell the idea. Without kind of getting in your way. So I guess that's the sort of main thing. And I think one of the games that inspires me the most, and strangely enough in this regard, is Half-Life, where they always made sure to never break the character's ability to like you've got one perspective through the entire game, right? Like there's never a moment where like you know like where you have a cutscene or you fade out and fade in and do something else. Like, and I agree with that thing wholeheartedly. Like the moment you do that, you feel like you lose control and you feel like it's a game telling you something rather than you playing something. So I actually am a big believer in like keeping the
Half-Life
character's perspective
remastered coming out?
the entire time. So that being said, we do have a few things. You know, there's an intro cinematic that you guys got to see.
It was very good.
Yeah, I thought that was a lot of fun to create, by the way. And there's even a couple more things like that later on in the campaign as well.
Very cool.
Which we'll be doing. So yeah, I think that the story stuff is a lot better in PoE 2 than it was in PoE 1. But we still, as I said, have to maintain that idea of like, don't get in the way, don't be annoying, don't like if you know what you're doing. Don't make you have to do annoying steps. Like actually, here's another.
I don't think my funny interviews would be appreciated with Jonathan or an actual GG employee.
About this kind of stuff, where like there's this idea.
Not by them, anyways.
Where we have to consider both what the character knows, but also what the player knows. So in our storyline, unlike a lot of games, if you know as a player where something is before someone has told you about it, then we will allow you to go and do that quest before you know about the quest and that kind of stuff. And like we're generally pretty consistent with the idea that like
what the fuck is this, dude? Fuck off.
We do a little cheating.
that you don't have to just talk to an NPC just to find something out that the player already knew. Like that's really important. Like you don't
Okay,
just
yeah.
like like if you can always like you have to go to an NPC if you have to like turn in a quest item because they need to like make something for you or do something like that. But if you already know exactly how something works, there is no requirement for you to talk to an NPC just to find that out. And once again, I think that's a bit unusual as far as games go because most story games kind of like the character has to know about something before you're allowed to do it. Whereas in a lot of cases, but here it's like it's very important to us that if you know what the campaign is and you've done the storyline a million times, you just go straight there, you just do the thing, and it's very there's nothing in your way.
Are there instances in which you could actually go and like take down like a boss that might be a part of a quest before the quest is actually taken?
Yeah, absolutely. That happens all the time. So we do in some cases have blockages and things that like, but when we do that, it's like it's because there's some key you have to get from something and stuff like that.
Yeah,
So there are blockages along the way that are mandatory, but generally speaking,
It's too
you
hard
can
to not say
ignore the NPCs for everything except having to turn in quest items,
like
and then
breathing or
you'll still be able to
blinking.
complete everything just fine.
That's
and
cool.
go through everything just fine.
Yeah, I like that because like the idea is this kind of goes back to one of our earlier discussions, but it's the idea of earning the ability to trivialize the game.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. So like, and that's something that players like. Who knew? Players like to earn things in games, including skill and reputation and items and whatnot. But I think that there's something really special in that where.
What
for
is
these
the
more
optimal rate of
players, once you've run
per
through the campaign a
sentence?
couple of times, now all of a sudden I don't need to talk to these people. I can go grab this, I can go kill this, I can do this, I can come back and then take the quest and turn everything in and then go back to doing what I was doing.
Sure.
That's very cool. I like that a lot. So just in general with obviously with PoE, you guys have PoE 2, you guys have done a lot of new things. You guys have added a lot of new things. How much freedom do you guys give your team to experiment with new ideas, and how do you guys decide what features are making it into these games?
So it is honestly a mix, but I guess one of the things I like to do as a manager generally is that
You play a single element throughout the game in PoE 2, yeah.
If someone suggests something and I've got an idea as well, then if those things are of equal weight, like if I don't have a reason particularly to prioritize one or the other, I'll always go with what the team wants to do over what I would prefer to do. I think that's just important because it means that the team just feels a lot more ownership over what the game is, and they feel like that their ideas are actually getting in, and they feel like what they come up with kind of gets into the final product. So like it's interesting being a game director because you've kind of got this mix of tyranny but also democracy in terms of like you've obviously have to make sure that the game is going in the direction, like I'm not going to do anything in the game that is something that I wouldn't like, but at the same time if I'm ambivalent towards something but another team member is really passionate about it, then it's absolutely something that I think that they should be allowed to do because it'll make them much happier. And I think also the passion of the person making the product shows through a lot in the final result. So I always want to err on that side. But the main thing, of course, that I'm here to say is like, you know what? But if I am like, no, I don't like this, I really have to just be tyrannical and say, this can't go in the game because I don't.
American Noogie.
I really have to, on some level, have some kind of cohesion around the whole vision of the thing.
Yeah.
You really don't want it to turn into some kind of design by committee product either. So it is a bit of a tough balance, but ultimately, I would hope that the team feels like ideas they come up with have a good shot to go in. And generally speaking, I'm fairly fine with whatever ideas they come up with going. And so long as there's something that I don't think is making the game worse, I'm like, yeah, go right ahead.
Yeah.
You can. Let's go with that. Let's come up. Let's do this crazy boss. Let's do whatever crazy monster you came up with.
Yeah, I like that, especially with the boss design and stuff like that. I think that like when I was playing the build of PoE 2 that I was playing, like the boss design is something. It's wild how much you guys have evolved it since your last game, or just in general, just for the genre. It's just so cool. Sure. Which actually it brings me to one final question that I have, and this is something that was kind of brought up when we were at the event. I just want to say that I appreciate the genius of this. But the idea that you guys are going to be releasing the first 3 acts and then you are going straight into the end game because you guys want to make sure that in early access, the end game is what is getting
completely to this. Well, you're not wrong about that. Like, okay, just because something
Can you imagine if the early access release was just like acts,
takes more
no end game really? That's what I was expecting it to be. I was expecting it to be like really basic maps.
But if I took that moment of like, well, what the hell are we doing quickly?
All right, cool interview. There is something else too. I think that's, I don't know. I was pretty worried when they announced that the last delay. I was like, oh shit, this is gonna be bare bones as fuck. Um, I think there was another video I wanted to. I think there was another thing somewhere. I think Havoc said that he's gonna upload his Merc gameplay or something. No, guess not. Path of Exile 2 build. What starter build to play?
What kind of like builds or have for here in PoE2?
And
So I
where's the
think
build at?
even though it's completely revamped skill tree basically, I still think there's going to be a lot of similarities from the original Path of Exile 1 skill tree. Me, for example, I'm somebody, I always pick specs and classes and ascendancies based on, I wouldn't necessarily say the fantasy, but more or less like how cool does it look like, right? So my personal pick when I saw the announcement trailer was definitely Infernalist, Hellcaller, Pet Ignite, Demon Lady, something, you know, because goddamn that's
Come on, I wanted to see the actual build. I guess there's this. I skipped it.
Which is
Recover 2% of mana on kills, 25% of it. I want to see like some actual leech stuff. I'm really curious about leech. It's either gonna be OP or shit. Stun threshold each time you've been stunned. We've already seen that.
cool one.
Oh, there is some sort of ailment immune stuff. It does exist. You can kind of reduce some ailments. It exists. Yeah, that's pretty good. Wait, so is this gonna be ES meta? If there's still a bunch of ES nodes, is it gonna be ES meta again? Wait, that's a life recharges instead of energy shield. That's not what Eternal Youth does in PoE1, is it? It kind of is. All damage. Your car's actually going to be fixed and not just a new car. It wasn't totaled. There would probably be basic filters on launch. I mean, I imagine it's the same filter system as U1. 15% more max lightning damage. Yeah, I mean, surely they released the filter info then, right? Wait, it's spaghettification? What the fuck is this? Increased movement speed, increased chaos damage, minus chaos res, reduced light radius, increased attributes. Spaghettification? What? I wonder if the small nodes are called spaghettos. Yeah, that does look like an OP monk node. But it's on the wrong side of the tree for it. But maybe you can go over there. I mean, this is right by where CI would be, so this could be the C. You could take this if you do the CIEB. Dude, I hope that's good. I hope CIEB monk is good. It'd be so fucking cool. I don't know. Losing light radius might actually be kind of bad in PoE2. I mean, honestly, it's not very good in PoE1. It's kind of bad if you play like a low life build and you don't have the light radius thing clicked or whatever. In this game, it might be pretty bad. %35% chance to trigger skills to refund half energy spent. Yeah, I think energy is like cast on crit and stuff. You need to like charge it up before it actually costs or something. Or until it actually, yeah, triggers. Order staff still, wait. Okay. If this is the tree, right? Isn't Monk's like over, Monk starts over here, right? It's in Templar spot? Pretty sure. Oh. Wait, Monk is Shadow? I thought it was in Strength. Shit. What? In Dex? That's cooked. Monk is definitely a deck in Strength archetype. Monk is definitely an in strength kind of thing. Bullshit.
Notable found on the outer edge of the
Look at this. Look at this D&D thing, right? Okay. Look at this. Strengthen, you see that? It should be strengthen because there's no wisdom, so wisdom defaults to int. Nope, it's strength and wisdom. See, it's right here.
tree, which makes quarterstaff skills which consume power charges count as consuming an additional charge. Flicker strike, anyone? Okay, lastly, these nodes. Yes, the Trickster is back in PoE 2. Well,
They shown what like top end gear numbers look like. I don't think they've shown. Have they shown? The only good gear I can think of them showing is like the spirit reservation shit on a scepter. Oh yeah, the ring, that's true.
Well, Noah's in Ascendant.
(9-minute). What? It was over in 9 minutes, or you mean it starts in 9 minutes? Hope you're wrong, Paul. I just looked. Yeah, builds do go sleeper for a while in PoE 1. It's gonna be crazy. Alright, I'll be back. You can watch this.
Done that, the area will be marked as completed and you will be able to travel past it and progress deeper into the world. If you die, then the map can no longer be run and you will have to find another way around to get to the areas behind it. There are also all kinds of other random encounters you might run into as you play maps. One such encounter are precursor artifacts. These are ancient, corrupting monuments that irradiate the monsters around them. The monsters that feed off the corruption are drawn to their power. If you defeat the monsters and cleanse the artifact, you will get a powerful temporary buff. Some of the buffs make you faster, others rain lightning or fire around you, and some even give you increased experience or help you find better items. You can also find strong boxes. These enigmatic chests guard piles of treasure, but are always a trap. Monsters lie in wait to attack you the moment you open it, and the boxes often have mechanisms to unleash powerful spells or dangerous debuffs. There are different types of strong boxes containing different items, and you can even use your currency items to craft them on the fly, so you can optimize the content. But be careful of opening one you can't handle. Sometimes you'll discover monsters frozen in essences, solidified crystalline corruption. These dangerous monsters can be broken free. If you defeat them, the essence they drop can be used to upgrade normal items to magic items with a guaranteed mod from a category. For example, we could use this one on some boots to ensure a movement speed mod. Rarely, essences will also drop that allow you to upgrade magics to rares, adding the guaranteed mod. This is incredibly powerful since it allows you to get a second deterministic mod in your crafting projects. Combining these with the currencies that are commonly found in Rayclast for modifying items, and we can get a very nice pair of boots indeed. Waystones, like all items, can also be crafted using your currency items.
And is anything cool? Insane? Thanks for the 12-year Prime Heartbone. 116 armor, 90 evasion on 65 base. Oh god. New gameplay reveal.
Fun class? Yep, you're watching it. You are watching the fun class footage. There's PHPNs. Like, does that make sense?
Is this his footage?
I would consider the
Come on, how far did he get?
Pretty good hammer at some point here. Totems or
Come on, you're telling me these guys had 8 hours to play and all the footage I've seen so far is Act 1?
Like,
what were they doing? Yeah, I think they might not be allowed to show it because there's this video. This is the other video that I wanted to watch. I think they must not be allowed to show it because people definitely got beyond Act 1. I think Act 1 is like under an hour.
This is one of the strongest announcements I've ever seen in the history of ARPGs.
This is insane. Holy crap, this is gonna be incredible.
This is old school RuneScape.
You gotta play it.
I'm excited.
This is perfect.
Diablo 4 is cooked.
See, this is what Diablo 4 should have been.
Like, Diablo 4 is bad, Diablo 4 is dead.
I'm gonna quit Diablo.
You know Woody was saying it wasn't, the way he was saying that
is dead.
I'm gonna quit Diablo 4.
That this beta has more depth to it than Diablo 4 does after the expansion. Like, this is fucking insane.
Welcome back, you freaking traitors. You probably clicked on this video to hear about Path of Exile 2, and that absolutely disgusts me. Anyway, in this video, I'll be going over all the major issues with Path of Exile 2,
get rid of the be right back
followed by a recent tweet by the Diablo 4 Giga Chad himself, Rod Diablo-like Ferguson, as well as many other well-known Diablo 4 superfans.
I hope he shows the Rod
in regards to
Ferguson
Path of Exile 2. All right,
in
let's
Saddam
jump in
Hussein's
and get
hole.
to the major problems with this game.
Unfortunately, Path of Exile 2 will not be available on Mac OS at the start of early access, but we're keen to have this platform. Okay, so Mac gamers once again are taking an L.
Well, that sums up all the major problems with PoE 2. Sucks to be you, Mac gamers.
Can you still install Windows and whatever on Apple computers?
Anyway, on to bigger news. Let's recap the tweet heard by literally billions of people around the world.
Look at Rod Ferguson's tweet. Is this the Diablo-like thing? Is this that bullshit about that? Let me see if I can find it. Where's Rod Ferguson? There it is. Let me double check.
So, a couple of days ago, when the PoE 2 stream ended,
On the same way you used to be able
literally,
to.
X is blowing up. People are posting like crazy. Holy crap! This is going to be incredible. Rod Ferguson,
the general manager of all of Diablo, decided to go on Twitter and absolutely cook himself with this unhinged take.
Oh my goodness. Hogs got the video. Path of Exile 2 reveal was so epic it's themed Rod Ferguson. All right, what is
The
it?
genre of ARPG is starting to mean a lot of different things. Much like Souls-like and roguelike, I wonder if we could normalize Diablo-like for ARPGs that follow the Diablo formula.
I absolutely cannot believe that this is real. Out of all the badass stuff that was showcased, after all the in-game, after all the Atlas rework, dual skill trees, and weapons that you can dual wield in one hand, all the 6 classes, and all this badass shit that they showed us yesterday at the Path of Exile 2 early access live stream. This right here was my
People took the bait on this. This post is 100% just a marketing rage bait.
favorite. That shit triggered Rod Ferguson so bad that he had to go make a tweet.
Rod Ferguson is scared. He is threatened, so he's lashing out. Grinding Gear Games has made something tremendous with Path of Exile 2. It has Blizzard shivering, and the game isn't even out yet.
No wonder Rod was making tweets. No, this isn't an ARPG. It's just like Diablo. Like, yeah, sure, Rod. Getting mad.
Bruh, you ain't even followed the Diablo like you ain't even got a goddamn Diablo in your game. So just please go sit down and get out of here.
Now, maybe he's scared, maybe he's a little nervous, but the last thing you want to do is come across as petty. And that's how this looks.
I think it's very unprofessional. If I was the VP of a game company, I wouldn't be throwing shade. That's a very passive-aggressive way to throw shade at GGG indirectly.
But this is such bad form.
I'll
It
look
is
at that later.
absolutely terrible. Like, the timing on it, everything about it just looks really, really bad. It comes across as jealous.
Well, hold up. You guys are the
Well, I
ones
think the
sounding
tweet's bad because D4 is nothing like the original Diablo games in any way.
jealous. Do you even know how freaking cool the term?
It's kind of like how Torchlight Infinite is not a Torchlight game, it just has the name. But Torchlight Infinite is actually good, but like D4 just has the name, right?
Term Diablo-like
Like Rod has genuinely nothing to do with a real Diablo game.
sounds? Look, I can completely see what Rod is talking about here, and the term Diablo-like is already spreading like wildfire. For example, when a game you are super hyped for launches and it's completely not what you expected, that's Diablo-like. When a company removes a key feature, like a charger for a phone, then sells that key feature back to you later on, that's Diablo-like. When a game has a skill tree system with no meaningful options, that's Diablo-like. When you are at a self-checkout...
I mean, that actually is... A skill tree with no meaningful options actually is Diablo-like.
You are asked to
That's actually true.
tip for doing the job the company you are tipping should be doing? Well, that's Diablo-like. And lastly, when a game you took off for work for has a massive delay on launch that lasts for hours or even days, yeah, you guessed it right, that's Diablo-like. So you should probably give Rod a little slack here. He knows what he is doing and is completely not jealous at all about PoE 2. In fact, PoE 2 should be thanking Diablo, not the other way around, right?
The thing is that, and Grinding Gear Games would be the first people to say this, that they owe a lot to Diablo 3. Because Diablo 3 being dog shit on release, dude, when the PoE closed beta came out, every single person in the general chat was talking about how shitty Diablo 3 was. And you know what's so fucking funny? Is when this game comes out, every single person in the general chat is going to be talking about how shitty Diablo 4 is.
Okay. Let's check in on some real loyal Diablo 4 superfans, who I am sure are going to stick with D4 instead of this Diablo-like PoE 2.
Hey folks, this is Riker, and this week saw the most hype live stream the ARPG world has ever seen. The announcement of Diablo 4 season of The Witch Doctor, basically. No, obviously it was Path of Exile too.
I'm a starving man. I'm starving for Path of Exile 2 content, so I'm going to rewatch the same live stream for 15 days in a row until this game's out, okay?
In my opinion, this is one of the strongest announcements I've ever seen in the history of ARPGs.
I think I can kind of get away with less time spent from now on in Diablo.
I actually want to see Riker's comment section on that, because I feel like his community is really really liked D4. All right, looking pretty good. Yeah, I'm gonna watch the try interview in a second.
Diablo 4 and more time invested into PoE 2. I'm going to be blasting this game at the very least until Season 7 launches, and then probably go right back into PoE 2.
Holy shit. Okay, alright, Rob, please tell me you didn't drink the Kool-Aid too.
I'm really excited to jump into PoE come December 6th.
Okay, I give...
Okay, that was so sponsored. I know that tone. That's the sponsored tone.
Well, let's at least try and figure out why this is happening.
Something that happens almost every time a new action RPG launches is people saying there isn't enough in-game content.
Nah, that's never happened. I've personally, I've never seen that happen in an ARPG. I don't know what he's talking about.
It's not complicated and it's not intimidating at all, which is why Diablo 4 sold so well. Almost no barrier to entry. They're great for casual players. The problem is it lacks an endgame almost entirely.
I'm really excited to jump into PoE. The biggest reason for me by far is probably the crazy endgame that they have. This focus on the endgame is just absolutely...
I don't know how, like, I feel like the end game can't be the reason why someone plays PoE 2. Because PoE 1 endgame is already nuts.
Crazy and fresh and new to me, because coming from...
Did he just say the focus on in-game is crazy and fresh and new to me? Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Yeah, before. After a certain amount of time, there is not that much to do in...
I'm sorry, I have to laugh.
There truly is nothing to do.
Holy shit, dude. Dude, back to back, saying the same thing. I love how the reaction is the same from literally everyone.
Well, I guess that's not literally true, but there aren't really any great rewards for doing that. I don't have any super awesome mounts. I don't have any titles. My character isn't glowing. I can't link you an item that is so rare and so godly that you wouldn't be able to find it yourself from all the hours that I put into it. The rewards are just not there.
Man, it gets worse. Nothing to do, no reason to do the things there are to do, and no rewards for doing them.
Okay, guys, I think it's inevitable. I also need to try this game out, and for exactly the reason you may think. To bring to light why PoE 2 is a vastly inferior game to the masterpiece we call Diablo 4. But for real, guys, I will be making a lot more videos on PoE 2, and you probably should be trying this game out yourself. It looks awesome. Please subscribe.
Shocked by the difficulty of the combat.
No. What do you mean, dude?
Check, please.
We're in the new studio today, so you know that's pretty nice. Very nice little area that I'm sitting in here.
Perfect. Is he a good audio level, everyone? Or a little louder?
Hopefully we're good.
Okay, perfect levels, Jonathan.
Nice.
Okay.
Uncle
Man,
Bob.
like I said a second ago, you are 9 days out from Path of Exile 2 launching, and everyone
I don't think Jonathan knew that.
I'm talking to is excited. It doesn't matter if they've been playing Path of Exile 1 for years. It doesn't matter if they literally haven't played video games ever. I show them just the snippet from the trailer, and they are ready to log in on December 6th. So my first question, what's the secret sauce? How are you guys doing this? How is Grinding Gear Games making non-gamers ready to log into a hardcore ARPG?
I think we just have a like when we're presenting our content, we always do it in a way where we're thinking about
Well, his mic is kind of deep fried. I mean, I could have got an interview, but I'm not a content farmer. I really don't have it in me to like be a real content farmer. I just can't. I cannot make stuff that's just regurgitated. That's like other people's stuff. I just don't have it in me.
like how are people going to react to it, like, you know, we just, and the other thing as well is that we're not afraid to put information in our videos. Like I think a lot of people are kind of like, you know, hey, you know, tone it back a little bit, you know, like people don't need so much information, this kind of stuff. But personally, I'm kind of a fan of just like, you know, let's
like when I went to the PoE, the LA play test thing, right? Like I wasn't, but the USB was fucked up, and I wasn't gonna spend 20 hours trying to unfuck it up just to upload that something that's already been uploaded 20 times. Same thing with like interviews.
just put everything out there, and if you do that, I think people get excited. So you know, I guess that's my philosophy about it
Yeah,
anyway,
I'm
and I
gonna
think
do the
people do
website
resonate
thing.
with that. If you show
I mean,
them
it's
just,
the
you know,
website thing's obviously not going to be ready for PoE 2. I mean, like I could have the layout and stuff set up, but I mean, we don't know anything yet, so
show them what you got.
well, I mean, the website will be up, but not with PoE 2 stuff because there's no PoE 2 stuff. I'm gonna put PoE 1 stuff on it for the time being, but I mean, there's nothing to do for PoE 2.
Cooking and show them gameplay, show them, you know, how they be able to how they're able to use all the tools you give them, and I think they'll be excited.
Definitely. And I hate to bring it up,
I
but
think
it wasn't an interview that dropped today.
I don't think
with
anybody got the
Legendary
key
Drops.
yet from having
just
lifetime
during the Settlers
spent.
of Calgar reveal, you all pivoted to focus entirely on Endgame.
Well, I'm just gonna make a website where I put good things on it instead of bad things like other websites.
How is your company that agile? Because I work at a company of about 70 people.
Right.
We are not agile at all. What are your processes like internally as developers? Like, how can you move on a dime and just go in?
I mean, I guess it's just about not being afraid to do it, right? I mean, certainly it causes some consternation, right? I mean, nobody likes being like jerked around from one task to the other, that kind of thing. But I think it is important because it just gives us the ability to really make sure we're reacting to what we think is important. And so, yeah, I mean, you know, like, I don't know what to say really. I mean, just like, you know, we just have to make those kinds of decisions and just tell
I
people,
keep hearing his microphone rub up against his beard.
you know, this is really what we have to do. Like when you realize that you're not doing the right thing,
I can
you
hear the
really
hairs.
have to jump on. You know, you can't just sort of say, oh, well, you know, we're just keep going to doing the wrong thing just because there's so much inertia, right? Like you have to actually try to turn the ship around. And so, you know, yeah, that's what we did.
Awesome. All right, Jonathan, I have the interview broken down into various different categories here. I wanted to start with questions about new players in particular and just people logging into the game, playing it for the first time and their experiences. So I wanted to start with the fact that in Path of Exile 1, it's renowned for not many people making it even to Brutus. I mean, I know it's a
Mhm.
free-to-play game. A lot of people try it out, but even when it was
Mhm.
paid, I'm sure a lot of people bounced early on. So I'm
Mhm.
curious, first 5 minutes of Path of Exile 2, do you think that onboarding experience is solid and you're going to really wrap people in and get them progressing further into the game?
I'm pretty sure it is. And I think that, like, if you're talking about literally the first 5 minutes, then I think that what will really just get you in is the fact that just the feeling of combat is much better. And that's really the thing you're going to appreciate from the first moment that you start playing. The other thing as well is we have a lot of, not necessarily, I mean, in the first 5 minutes, you're going to come upon your first boss, right? And that will be a much more engaging experience than Hillock was, you know what I mean? Like, the first boss is significantly better. But even just after that, right? Even the first 15 minutes, there's like other bosses really close. You're sort of getting into that experience of having the more interesting combat and more interesting things going on.
But why is I'm watching this video and everybody's leaving?
Just sort of
Why?
right away. And you know, it's funny. I had a friend over at my place who was playing the game the other day, and there was a word I thought was really interesting that he used for this. He's like, "Oh, you're so generous with the content," and I was kind of like, it's kind of an interesting way to look at it. Is like, you know, like you know, he's kind of like you're giving people what they want so quickly. It's kind of like, you know, I find that's a kind of an interesting way to look at it. But you know, yeah, I mean, basically, we just want people to have a good time, and you know, even. Even in the from the very beginning, like before we even made Path of Exile 1, like when we founded the company, one of the things that I had as my metric is like, what's the time to first zombie? You know,
Yeah, I don't know if PoE 2 is gonna actually. I feel like free-to-play games, you're just always gonna have a massive drop-off before anything happens because people like download it, try it, log in, log out, right? And then like go play League of Legends again or something. But I don't know, the combat being early might make a difference because the combat's way better.
what I mean, like when's the first moment you can actually kill something? You know, like you just kill like a basic
I don't.
enemy.
Yeah, there's a
And I kind of
pinnacle
want to make that
boss.
sure that that's as minimal as possible, and that's why we kind of make sure that we start the game the way we do with like action immediately and that kind of stuff. So, you know, that's kind of just a philosophy we've always had.
Definitely. Getting people right into the action is important, and lots of people, especially viewers of
Thanks for the
Poodle
7-year
Extreme.
resub, Google Bob.
my channel, are
Prime.
completely new Path of Exile players. They've never played an ARPG, they never played Path of Exile 1, and they are wondering, in Jonathan's eyes, what is the busted build? What is the archetype they should log in and play on December 6th if they want to get into the action fast? I'm not going to use you for clickbait videos, Jonathan. I'm just wondering, from your view, I know you said people were...
What do you... He's not going to use them for clickbait videos. Well, I feel like... I don't understand people who are like... I feel like the word clickbait has gotten kind of out of control. No, almost nobody uses it properly. Like, making your thumbnail flashy is not clickbait.
really like the monk that had a high satisfaction score, but is it the most powerful?
Not necessarily. I mean, I honestly...
There's nothing else to watch. This is I've watched every other piece of content. I mean, I agree it's cringe, but you know, if you don't make these hyper ADHD dopamine brain fried thumbnails, nobody clicks your video.
don't know that I should be recommending builds particularly.
It's what the people want. The people want the big flashy thumbnail.
I mean, I've said a few times, I think that I think the mercenary could be a very good new player friendly class, both because you're further away from the action and just because of that like instant response of everything. Like you know, if you're going to pick something like the warrior or something like that, you're going to have to worry about the fact that you know, you have to commit to attacks and this kind of stuff. Whereas with something like the mercenary, because it's so fast from the point where you like, you know, attack and the point you recover, and also because you're further back, I think that could be a very good choice for new players. But honestly, like any class can work. Like any class can be the one that you work. And look, the main reason why we have classes in the first place, like, because I mean, we could be a game that just has like zero, you know, introductory stuff. Like we already let you choose between all and mix and match all the different skills and weapons and things like that.
Off.
So the reason why we have classes at all is because people really want like a stereotype to latch onto when they start the game to think about like, okay, how am I going to build my character, right? So you show them some things like, like here's a ranger and here's a sorceress and so on. And then when they see that, they immediately get an idea in their head about what kind of thing it is that they might want to
Why is
do.
it
So I think that
paused?
when it comes
Who
to
did
that, like you're
that?
best off just picking like what excites you, right? Like what is the thing that just makes you feel like, oh yeah, I could see how I'm going to play this, right? And so you do that, and then I think you'll.
Hey,
you'll
why
have a
are
good
all the
time.
voice changing
I
things
baited you into
paused?
that answer. That's exactly what we wanted to hear, man. Whatever you're going to have the most fun with. And I'm curious on character selection. I know it was talked about in the past that ascendancies might appear on that screen. Are they still not there, and you find out about them in the trials?
Yeah, they're still not there. Look, that screen is certainly something that needs some UI attention. We just haven't had time to work on it more. There's
Oh,
so
they
many
should be
things that will
unpaused
still
now.
improve even now. But I mean, look, that's what the early access is for, right? There's going to be tons of time to improve on that stuff. But yeah, for the beginning, it's just like, pick what you think sounds like it would be cool, right? And we do have a few like little videos of skills and things like that on that screen, which like show, and like
I bet it was
kind of gives,
Cuglor.
like
It
so
smells
there's
like
kind of three
Cuglor.
main points for each class of like here's the kind of things you can expect from that class. And there's a little video for each one as well. So we've got a little bit of information there, but we don't have like full-on ascendancy classes and everything there. I think there's room for that sort of stuff, but not at the moment.
Okay, awesome. Now I want to move on to testing and what new players, completely new players to ARPGs, found the most challenging in Path of Exile 2. I've heard that Path of Exile 1 players were just shocked by the difficulty of the combat and the like, and newer players were kind of fine with it. What did they find challenging, though? Because I know you did a lot of first user testing, and I found that very interesting because you're going to get a lot of first users on December 6th. What did they find hard?
So definitely the things they were finding the most challenging was the character customization and itemization stuff, right? Like that's where they're kind of, potentially finding that they, that like, so, I mean, we asked quite a lot of questions about like, what do you feel like you're skilled at and that kind of stuff. Like, try to sort of get a gauge for like, how people rate their own skills in different areas. And it was certainly like understanding itemization that was the part that people found the hardest. So we've actually done quite a few things to improve in that area, I think, since then. I mean, like, it's just kind of subtle stuff, but just over time, we've just been, carefully massaging towards a situation where, it's easier to find the stuff that you need to find. It's, there's more help, there's more guidance. There's also things like, the socketing system being, I think, a lot easier than the crafting bench system that we had and things like that. So there's things like that, I think, that will help a lot. So that's kind of the stuff that I think new players find the hardest. And then I think that's really just because, I mean, like there's a lot of stats, there's a lot of things kind of coming at you, we just have to make sure that we're not overwhelming you.
I just thought of the next level of content. You take the questions from like past interviews and then you just overlay yourself on the person, make it pretend I'm interviewing him with like pre-recorded answers.
Too much with that stuff. And of course, there's the giant passive tree, which always gives people a bit of a scare. So that's really the stuff that I would say that new players find the hardest.
Okay, well, awesome. Now, during the betas, I know that there were a few closed beta tests. People were freaking out when they first got those NDA invites and everything. Between those tests, what were the largest changes? And did you really change a lot about the game after the tests themselves? Because I know like when we went to LA, you took a ton of feedback and made a huge number of changes just between March and June. Did that happen again with all the beta tests this year?
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of it really comes down to difficulty, but the thing with difficulty is that people know the game is too hard, but they don't know why it's too hard, and the reasons can be hugely varied between like, oh, it's just this one boss ability to like, oh, the entire way you're scaling spell damage is incorrect, or random stuff like that. So there's all sorts of things, and it's always just, can we tease out what exactly it is that people are running into that's the most, that's the reason for the thing they're finding hard. So I think there was a variety of changes. So one of them was like, the map change where, you can see what's out there so you know what to find. A lot of it was down to, more specific item drops around the place. Then there were things like
Jesus Christ,
the flask change. So the flask change was pretty big, I think, because that one really was like people dying to because they were fumbling their flasks. But it took quite a while to identify that was like an issue. Like we knew that we kind of knew that we weren't happy with flasks, but we hadn't. I don't think I'd really appreciated.
We're desperate, dude. We're desperate out here.
Really did struggle with them. So that's another one of those things. But I mean, look, it's all over the place, and it's like. The devil's in the details, really, because even something like just the exact specifics of the passive tree, even for a new player, even if they're not like going deep on it, like it can actually be worse for new players because a new player will pick something that's weak without realizing it, and so you need to make sure that everything on there is reasonable. So there's quite a lot, sort of like as I said, it really all comes down to those details that make sure that the game is feeling right. And I think that without doing a lot of those tests, it would have been very hard to appreciate some of those problems because you just don't, when you're playing yourself, there's actually like a tendency where you'll always pick the stuff you kind of know is good subconsciously. So I actually have like a thing when I'm playing now where often I'm like, okay, I'm going to pick what I want and then I'm going to do the opposite of that. Like in order to kind of force myself down the kind of like the not golden path of like, what if you were the what if I picked the worst choice every time for like, what are you doing? Like, how can I make sure that that's like not too terrible? That's kind of another thing you kind of have to make sure that you're doing as well.
Definitely. I have two follow-ups from that question. First, and I don't want you to commit to a release cadence or anything, but once we go into early access, do you see the team making large balance changes pretty quickly? Kind of like Path of Exile 1. I'm notorious for going into the freaking ancient history of PoE 1 and seeing that when it first released, weekly updates, going in, making huge balance changes, wild swings back and forth, passive tree resets every like 11 days and the like. Do you see that happening with early access given how much larger scale it seems it's going to be? Or is it going to be more stretched out, maybe a month, 2 months, 3 months?
Well, so I think that there's going to be a couple of different things depending on what type of thing we're talking about here. So for balance changes, I have absolutely no doubt that in that first week we're going to be just doing a storm of crazy things, just because like there'll be, I mean, look, there's going to be cases where like people just haven't tested bosses with certain builds and things like that, right? Like, especially in the end game, which has had, less testing, obviously, than the start of the game. So there's going to just be things where it's like someone will be like, oh, this boss is just impossible with minions. And like, someone probably did test it with minions at some point to make sure the AI is good, but there probably wasn't like a really, like, is this actually easy enough? Like that kind of stuff. Like, you'll get changes like that. And I'm sure there'll just be cases where, we need to make those kinds of changes. So and the other thing that's going to be, I'm sure, is just lots of like someone finds something that's just like not just busted in a normal way things are allowed to be busted, but like busted in a completely ridiculous way that just can't be allowed to stand. I'm sure that will happen, and so long as we can fix that stuff fast enough, I think that we may have to do a few things like that. But ideally we don't. But we'll see how that goes. So I'm sure in the first week there'll just be lots of that stuff. But if you're talking about like larger content inclusions, like if we're talking about like new classes and like more sort of content type things, I suspect that we'll probably batch those up into like a larger
gamer
cycle.
Juice
Probably,
in that bottle.
probably like, I mean, we were thinking like 2 months. It might end up being 3. Like I'm not entirely certain. But we'll kind of like work that out when we go there. The funny thing is like, so like months ago.
I mean, on the computers that were at the playtests, they were okay. It definitely wasn't below 60
plans
FPS.
for what we wanted to do immediately after release, but as you get closer to release, like everything just falls apart, and you kind of have to be like, okay, after release, we'll just have to take stock and see where we are, because no contact survives. No plan survives contact with the enemy, as they say. We'll just have to sort of reassess and see what's going on at that point. But effectively, yeah, we'll probably do larger updates, just because I think. In order to actually get good testing for something, you have to get enough players back to actually test it substantially. And people certainly are much more willing to come back for a larger update than they are for a smaller one. So I think that's kind of important. We actually noticed in PoE 1 when we were doing the weekly updates that, we didn't really see like a lot of people come back for them. Like the people who were playing were really happy, but the people who weren't playing it wasn't rising to the level of them actually coming back. So I think it's better to make sure that if you've got a new update for even in early access, you want to make sure there's enough to kind of sustain it. But of course, that doesn't mean that we're not going to fix all the like random small issues that like anything that doesn't like that wouldn't be an attractive thing for someone to come back for. You might as well just put it in immediately, because like that's just that like bug fixes and just little balance changes, because it's not like a big deal anyway. So you might
I
as
think
well just
they
throw it in
said
there.
there's going to be DLSS.
Now, I have to ask, because I have been yearning ever since I saw it at ExileCon 2023. The Druid, the bear form. Is that the reasons the Druid is delayed? Because it's got crazy animation problems with WASD, or is it just the final bit of polish on the third form?
No, it's not that. It's just literally that we had to pick something. We had to pick like when we were slimming down for early access a little bit, because as I said, we're going to have 8. When we're slimming down, we're like, look, unfortunately, the Druid is going to have to be on the chopping block for now. It was really sad, but we just had to pick our battles. And I have no doubt that that'll be one of the next ones that comes out. And yeah, and the reason ultimately is that making a new form for the druid just is a lot of work. One of the forms wasn't done. We looked at the amount of work it would take to get the druid over the line, and we're just like, look, if we can not have that, especially because when it comes to this stuff, it's like if you're talking about adding like a new animal form, that's like work that could go into like making a new boss fight or something like that. So because you know it's the same kind of like it's the animation team. Ultimately, you have to do like a bunch
Dude,
of
give
work.
me more. Give me more demon transformation kind of stuff. Fucking druid transformation shit's boring.
Stuff, you know, rigging or just all that stuff has to happen. So it isn't just the sort of skills pipeline, as we might call it, that has to be worrying about that. It's also the, you know, the kind of the animation team who work on that stuff. So yeah, when we look at that, it's just like, look, if we cut this, it's going to add more content elsewhere versus if we cut this other class where it wouldn't really so much. So that's kind of how those decisions work.
Now I have two very quick ascendancy questions for you, and then we'll move into classes themselves. First, last time we spoke, when we spoke in March, I tried to get some ascendancy details out of you, and you said you were working on a broken sorceress ascendancy. You didn't know if it was going to make it into the game. Did it make it into the game, or are we not seeing
So that was the chronomancer, the like time stop and everything. Like I just I mean, the moment you tell people you can, like, you know, the moment we're like, oh, we want to be able to stop time, it's like immediately, you know, that's how do you make that not OP? You know, yeah, it's it was absolutely that. It's very fun to use.
Dude, I want to see the party full of 6 chronomancers just chain time stopping.
Yeah, it's just really cool.
Awesome. Glad to hear it made it into the game. And then the other ascendancy question: can you change ascendancies?
Less than 3.
You actually can't right now. I actually made. I think I did another interview recently where I thought that we could, but I believe that you can't at the moment. There's probably more discussion to have about that.
Turn that down.
I do know that certainly some designers are very keen to be that a locked choice. So you know, we'll talk about that more. We'll see how that goes. But at the moment you can't, and so that'll be how it goes into early access anyway.
Okay, so for the foreseeable future, once you pick an ascendancy,
I mean, not necessarily. We'll, as I said, we'll talk about this
more.
Well,
did he say something actually good?
Very keen to be that a locked choice. So at the moment, I think I did another interview recently where I thought that we could.
Awesome. Glad to hear it made it into the game. And then the other ascendancy question: can you change ascendancies in PoE 2?
So you actually can't right now. I actually made. I think
Ouch.
I did another interview recently where I thought that we could, but I believe that you can't at the moment. There's probably more discussion to have about that. I do know that certainly some designers are very keen to be that a locked choice. So you know, we'll talk about that more. We'll see how that goes. But at the moment you can't, and so that'll be how it goes into early access anyway.
Okay, so for the foreseeable future, once you pick an ascendancy,
I mean, not necessarily. We'll, as I said, we'll talk about this more. But you know,
okay.
Yeah, but in the moment at least, yeah, you can't change them.
Okay, sounds great. Now classes, just broad questions about the classes from me. So you've talked about the monk having the highest satisfaction score.
That's kind of
for
weird.
Everyone who's tested. Which class has the lowest satisfaction score, and what are you doing to perhaps bring it up, if anything?
I feel like I feel like he's like. He has like he like gets excited over the businessy stuff. Like, how are you guys actually gonna launch this game?
So
what's the satisfaction score? What was that?
Score for you've talked about the monk having the highest satisfaction score for everyone who's tested. Which class has the lowest satisfaction score, and what are you doing to perhaps bring it up, if anything?
So the one thing to say is that the difference between these is not like super high, but the lowest one on that survey that we were referring to was actually the sorceress, funnily enough.
Really?
And I think that I think that the reason for it is just because in the skill set, there's not like quite as much combo stuff as what some of the other classes have, and so we actually, after that point, we did work a bit on that and try to sort of improve, make a few more of those things sort of work together a little bit. But I think there's a little bit more work to do. I think that what I've heard some people say about the sorceress is it's a little bit more in the PoE 1 direction of like there's less kind of like less cross element combinations than what some of the other classes have. So therefore, like if you do pick that class, like there will probably be more situations where it's like there's less, like you're probably going to use less skills overall than other classes, or rather, it's not so much that you will use that, but like you won't be forced into as much using more variety. So I think that's something we can still improve by just adding more synergies between the elements. But that's at least my understanding of probably why I think that's the case. But as I said, we've already made some changes since the point when we did that survey. So I think that it already is, like somewhat improved already by that. But yeah, that was the thing. But I mean, as I said, we're talking like 0.1 of a. Like if you out of 5 stars, it's like 0.1 of a star lower than the others, and like when you sort of dig into it, it's like yeah. But I mean, as I said, I think that's at least my reason for for why I think the source was like that. But yeah, that's kind of I mean, as I said, we can always improve that, and I think we have been as well.
Yeah, awesome. Just wanted to hear. I thought it would be a curious question.
Yeah.
Now this one, I don't know if you can answer it or not, but everyone knows there's a monk in Path of Exile 2. Monks use quarterstaffs. Monks use their fists a little bit with finishers and, mobility skills. Are there any unarmed combat support options? Is the default attack
I mean,
supportable
there's
with your fist?
almost certainly there's going to be.
Can you make something busted with it? What is that a thing in PoE2 right now? Or
so I believe that default attack is supportable. I'm like 99% certain of that, but I have to admit, I haven't actually seen that user interface myself because I haven't.
Yeah, you can. I do remember this. You can at least at one point you could. I don't know if they changed it, but you can use support gems on default attack.
Unarmed build. There is a plan. There is a plan for a bunch of unarmed build support, but it actually did get cut for early access for the time being. So unfortunately, I can say that Facebreakers will not make it in to early access. But we do have a plan for it.
A martial arts build. I hope there is. I don't think there is, but a martial arts build would go really hard with the new PoE2 combat.
There is like a whole thing for that's going to support that with other stuff. Now, one of the reasons for that actually is that it would require making unarmed versions of a ton of skills, like animations.
Oh, okay.
So there's actually...
why couldn't you just use the claw animation?
It ended up being cut just for that reason alone. Like it was just a bunch of animation work that we ended up not having time for.
Isn't that literally the same as claws?
And effectively you're talking about a bunch of animation work that's just to support that one unique. Because like that unique really is like kind of the key to being able to make unarmed damage.
Wait, is there no claws in PoE2? Now that you say that, I don't think I've seen any.
Like actually decent. There were a couple of other things as well that were sort of intended for unarmed things, but yeah, we're not going to do it for now. But it'll come in the future. We'll get.
I mean, actually, they haven't really shown any like kind of rogue themed characters, so it probably comes with that. Yeah.
Get to the point where you can do that.
Okay, is Facebreakers still a pair of gloves in PoE2?
Yeah, it is.
It is.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, this is a fun one just for you, Jonathan.
Did I want toe suckers? It's like Facebreakers, but you put them on your feet.
What is your favorite skill to use in Path of Exile 2 right now? I know you're a mercenary fan. You're playing through as the mercenary right now. Is it on the merc or something else?
That is really tricky. Look, I mean, if we're talking about the merc, then my favorite thing is definitely the ice wall that shot us. What's it called? I can't remember even the name of it, but it's the one that fires a shot and then makes like 2 diagonal ice walls that come out, and then following up with the fragmentation rounds to explode them. Like I just love that combo.
Why his microphone looks like it's floating?
It just feels really satisfying to me.
I mean, I know it's connected via this, but it doesn't look like it's connected.
But it's like obviously like every class there's interesting stuff. Like on the monk, it's probably the bell. Like I just love that bell. There's so many little things about its design, and it's just a fun skill. Like I love that kind of thing. So those are definitely up there for 2 of my favorites. But I mean, there's always new stuff. There's lots of cool things, right? That's just the kind of stuff that I like to do.
The bell is incredible, and you guys even snuck a showcase of it with a crossbow rapid shot into the.
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
It's focusing on this
just
part of the microphone.
Just to give a hint to the idea that there might be some pretty interesting ways that you can do some pretty cool stuff.
Oh, definitely. All right, rapid fire question here. Can we use the weapon swap system passive?
Wait, it's rapid fire already? What? How's it
skills to allocate keystones, or can they only allocate?
Oh, I missed it.
All right, rapid fire question here. Can we use the weapon swap system passive skills to allocate keystones, or can they only allocate notables and travel nodes?
So you can't do keystones, but I actually do have some interesting stuff to talk about with this because we were originally...
That didn't seem like a rapid fire question.
But then... So the skill that actually originally was like that completely broke this, that we realized like this was going to be like not okay, was Necromantic Aegis, funnily enough. Which now for anyone who doesn't who hasn't played PoE 1, effectively what this does is it makes it so the stats from your shield are transferred onto your minions. But when you've got weapon swap involved, where like like if you can turn that on and off, it caused the specific details of this are kind of complicated, but it caused a lot of chaos in like how the stat system worked and like how the minions would have to work and like the snapshotting of this and like just a whole lot of details around that were very complicated. And then at some point while we were discussing that, because we kind of were like, okay, how are we going to even implement this? It was like a whole thing. Then we're like, well, hang on, like, is it even okay for other keystones anyway? Like, when you really come right down to it, like, is chaos inoculation really okay if you can turn it on and off? Like, it's kind of supposed to be this like massive downside, and like if you can just like like it's kind of
Okay, yeah, thinking about that, that'd be kind of crazy. Just flop on keystones. You 30-90 last. Yeah, well, the thing about PoE is, right, like, you can just get unlucky with your build in PoE and you're just fucked. No matter how good your setup is, you'll be at like 40 FPS.
like we're kind of thinking maybe it wasn't okay, and then we sort of made the decision. You know what? Maybe keystones should actually be not swappable like that, just because of the type of. I think that might be a balance problem too far, even for us. Like even as far as we're willing to like accept a lot of these kinds of problems, like I think that might even be a bridge too far, even for us. So yeah, we decided not to allow it, and that's what we're going with for now, anyway.
Yeah, you knew people were already theory crafting ways to like get the perfect keystones on their side. Oh yeah, definitely.
Right.
That's good. Another rapid fire, if you know off the top of your head, how many passive points are there in total? Because people are already looking at the tree and trying to path through it.
Sure.
Now.
I believe it's 122 is the final count, and once you get all of the optional skill books and stuff like that.
Okay, awesome. Another rapid fire. This is a spicy one though.
This is literally just normal questions. It's not what. This is literally the same as the last questions before the rapid fire ones.
Are you able to do a one button respec if you have enough gold or if you pay a premium, or is it one node at a time?
You will have to do one node at a time. And like the thing is, I mean, yeah, I guess I can see why people would want that. But generally speaking, that's not the kind of behavior we're really encouraging, right? Like we want you to actually be changing your build from one to the other. So yeah, there's just a one node at a time. I mean, look, it won't take you too long, right? You can click 100 times even if you're level 100. Like it's not too bad.
Oh, dude, Reddit is pissed. Okay, I don't know why they don't just have a button to do it all. Nice. You can click that. You need the text to be brighter. And the PoE2 logo to be bigger.
I know it won't. I get it. I totally get it. Another one. So we've seen this key term overflow a few times, and some people are wondering how it works. Could you explain how it works?
Yeah, so anytime you've got something that says overflow, it means that you're able to overcap that resource by up to double. So effectively, overflow just means, yeah, like if it's leech or if it's like, any other kind of thing that gives you back life or, for example, or mana or shield or whatever it is, it basically just means, yeah, you can get back up to double of that resource.
Okay, awesome. That makes sense even to me, and I'm pretty simple-minded about these mechanical sort of things. Awesome, thank you. All right, another rapid fire. Can you use skills?
I don't think he knows what that means.
Granted by ascendancies in meta gems, like Cast on Shock.
No, you can't. So when you get one of those ascendancy skills, they effectively just appear in your skill screen. Like they're not a gem; they're just kind of like there and locked in by that. So because you can't take them out and put them somewhere else, you can't put them in a meta gem.
Okay. And then meta gems, can you use multiple of the same meta gem? I know you can't repeat supports, but can you have two cast on ignites in your build?
You absolutely can. You absolutely can. But of course, you'll have to pay the spirit cost for both of them. So that's how that's balanced, and that's why it's fine.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, you guys released a teaser yesterday. I'm not sure if you saw a scepter minion ascendance or not ascendance.
Yeah.
Oh, the second scepter that looked like a mirror tier item, which was just awesome to see. All right, now we're going to move on from classes, and we're going to talk a little bit about combat. So when I played Path of Exile 2, the Raven fight and the Executioner fight hard locked me for combined about 4 hours. What right now do you think is the hardest boss fight in Path of Exile 2's campaign? Not the end game, but the campaign itself. And do you think it potentially is going to hard lock a lot of players if they're stubborn and they get that Elden Ring mindset where they're just like, I'm just going in over and over. I'm not stopping until it hits 0.
Well, so we've definitely tried to like improve the issues that we had with that in that one. But what I would say is that the further you go into the game, the
I
less
think
kind
I don't know when the last of anyone 2 is. I don't know if he's on the first, but he was at the one I was at, and yeah, if you're not good, you're gonna be hard locked for hours.
of like of the feedback we've been able to address overall.
It was hard.
Just because, you know, if there's less of it, right? Like as you go further in. So effectively what that means is that I have no doubt that if there's a boss that's going to hardlock people, it's almost certainly going to be in Act 3, I would say, something like that. But I mean, on the same time, like ideally the hardest
Well, maybe now.
bosses are.
But when I played, so many people are gonna be hard locked.
Later in the game, like that's kind of what you want in some sense. So yeah, like I mean, look, some of those fights are pretty hard. I don't know that there's one that I'd point to as like this is the hard one. Really, I mean, as I said, we kind of try to make sure that they're all kind of a relatively even keel, or rather slowly increasing as you kind of go through. So yeah, my hope would be that the Act 3 end boss.
Yeah, I mean, when I played, nothing dropped. I don't think I even got like a transmute or something.
You know, and then ideally the second time through it's even harder again. So, but we'll see how it goes. And as I said, as you now know, right, like if you go around the rest of the areas, you'll find other stuff, you'll find more items and so on, and that'll definitely help you. And if you come back, you'll definitely do a lot better.
Question on bosses in regular versus ruthless, not ruthless, cruel. Do they have new abilities in cruel, or are they the same, just a little buffed with damage hit points?
So usually they don't have like completely new abilities, although I think that in some
I
cases there
played
might
8
be a
months
little
ago.
bit of that. Usually what it is, it's kind of tweaking the parameters or the AI or the radii and like things like that, just like things about them, and it makes skills feel dangerous in new ways quite a lot of the time, just because you know, like a skill can feel very differently just by changing where it is you go. So the same is true in maps as well, where once again you've got like you know, we have to make sure that some of these bosses that were balanced for people who are, you know, level 10 or something are now able to feel like they're challenges in the end game. So effectively we have to do something about them. We can't just leave them as they are. There has to be tweaks. And so yeah, a lot of those changes effectively just get made to make and they make the bosses feel quite different. The other thing as well that you have in Cruel is that there are just monster types that have been shifted around and things like that. Like so the combat in areas can feel a little different as well.
I hope they add like weather effects. This is like the only positive thing I ever have to say about Last Epoch is the weather effects are really good.
In some cases, so
I hope PoE 2 does something like that.
There's just little fun details like that can vary things up and just vary the experience up a little bit.
Awesome. Now, one more combat monster related question, and it's revisiting a favorite topic of the past.
Dude, that'd be so fucking sick. You go like on the Atlas, and there's like you can actually see weather, and it'll do different things to the map. That'd be so fucking sick.
Of Exile community. Rare monster modifier.
Like take it a step further where it's not just cosmetic, and like if there's a thunderstorm over the maps, it'd be that'd be so fucking cool.
We haven't seen a lot of that about in Path of Exile 2 in the past little while.
Yeah.
We've seen some of it in the playthroughs. Is that philosophy the same as in Path of Exile 1, or are we expecting to see 3, 4 mod rare monsters? And how do you keep the monster's identity when you add a whole bunch of modifiers to it? Because all these monsters, they're unique fights in of themselves, right? So how do you keep that clean?
There's actually been quite a lot of specific work on rare monsters that I don't think we've talked about to anyone yet, actually, and it's probably quite interesting. So the first thing I will say about it is that we realized a while ago that it's actually like not every monster type makes sense as a rare. Like if you just have a rare zombie, it's just kind of like it's not a good fight. So we actually decided, hey, you know what? We're going to pick monsters that are going to be ones that can be rare, and bear in mind, many of them can. And then what we'll also do is, if there are monsters that that don't work well as rares, maybe there's mechanic changes we can do for rare versions of that monster that could improve that. So then what we started to do is we're like, oh, you know what we're going to do? We're actually going to split out the monster types for
If they that I've actually had the idea of doing like some kind of meme videos like meta reports, but do it as like a weathercaster. If they actually add like weather on the atlas, if it was like a kind of like the lantern event, you could do like a weather report on what the weather's doing on the atlas. I think that'd be really funny.
monsters and then the rare version of that monster. And then we're actually going to do specific balance for the rares of those monsters. And that actually matters as well because there are mods that can go on certain monster types that like just completely blow up the life to unreasonable levels and things like that. Like there are actually cases where now that we've actually got the ability to do specific balance for a rare of a given monster type, we can actually tune that difficulty to make that much better. And so they'll get extra, they'll actually get extra abilities in some cases just because they're a rare. Like, I mean, as a random example, there are like the very first monster, the quill, in the first area, so after the zombie, you've got the quill crab, which is these little things that shoot little spikes. And they also appear later on in the hunting grounds as like a poison version of those. And I believe if those are rare, and I think I'm getting this right, then they immediately get a different way that the spikes work. And like I'm trying to remember the exact details of this, but it's like they like land on the ground and explode afterwards or something like that. There's like some little thing that sort of happens. So effectively, it's like there's like little specific things that we can do. And so that stuff, I think,
it's not mine. That's his
helps
profile
a lot.
picture.
And look, I'm sure we're going to do more of this, like after the early access is launched as well, like more things like that. But it really upgraded the rare fights quite a lot to be able to do that specific balance. And then, of course, you also have the mods. And once again, we're doing a whole pass on mods and trying to make them a lot better. I mean, look, there's even more we can add here, I'm sure. But trying to make sure that each of the rare mods that we add, like makes sense for the monster. We make sure that the rare mods like there are pulls and tags so that like you don't necessarily get every single mod on every single monster to kind of make sure that they make sense and actually have a reasonable fight. And I don't even know if this got done, but there was talk at one point about having a for each rare. And once again, I don't know if this actually got implemented or not, but we were talking about having it so that for each monster. We make sure that at least one fun mod goes on the monster to kind of make it have like by what I mean by that is like we look at each monster type, we're like, okay, here's a set of different mods that are going to make it so that the fight has some kind of interest to it. We make sure the first step is like put one of those on it, and then after that, then we can kind of be more random with what the rest of the mods are, and things like that. So yeah, there was actually quite a lot of balance stuff there that went into that, and there's more to come. But I think that the rare fights you will find are significantly more interesting in PoE 2 than they were in PoE 1 because of all the specific attention that they had.
Streaming animal? I mean, it's obvious. You should. Yeah, I mean, you're just not thinking of it, but it's obvious. It's right there.
Definitely sound like it. Everybody's freaking out. That sounds amazing, especially that first system of just the monsters changing implicitly if they're rare versus if magic or normal. That's a great answer. Can you answer if Soul Eater is in Path of Exile too?
I actually don't know the answer to that. You'd have to ask Mark that one. So he's the one who's been setting up all that stuff. So I actually don't know. I would have to go check with him.
Soulleader.com.
All right. Lovely. Love the answer, man. Okay, now we got a bulky section on Endgame that I want to dive into here. I want to start with, again,
so I actually don't know. I would have to go check with him on that one.
All right. Lovely. Love the answer, man. Okay, now we got a bulky section on Endgame that I want to dive into here. I want to start with, again, another infamous Path of Exile problem that we've experienced in Path of Exile 1. And I think it's one of the reasons you designed Path of Exile 2 in its endgame. One-shots. How are one-shots in endgame looking right now? I'm not talking about bosses using huge abilities and obviously one-shotting you, but I'm just talking about randomly mapped.
How did you word that?
Bulky section on... Lovely. Love the answer, man. Okay, now we got a bulky section on Endgame that I want to dive into here. I want to start with, again, another infamous Path of Exile problem that we've experienced in Path of Exile 1.
Okay, he gave it the quote fingers. He knows it's a meme from shit players.
And I think it's one of the reasons you designed Path of Exile 2 in its endgame. One-shots. How are one-shots in endgame looking?
Well, I wanted to see how he asked that question. I wanted to see if he like believes in that dog shit or if he's not stupid.
right now. I'm not talking about bosses
Looks like he's not stupid because he gave it the quote fingers.
using huge abilities and obviously one-shotting you, but I'm just talking about randomly mapping your mediocre defenses and you just get one shot out of the blue. Is that happening in testing, or is that avoided for the most part?
Well, it's definitely happening at the moment, and that's because we just haven't finished the balance of a lot of monsters, and it's one of those things that's actually really hard to completely root out because there are a lot of attacks that some people, depending on your playstyle, just might not get hit by. And obviously, you know, when the balance people do their initial balance, they try to get it right. But it's one of those things that's just easy to miss. And so I have no doubt that at the start of early access, there will be cases where some monsters are just unfair. You know, that'll happen. I mean, like when we were doing the beta test, there were these like
Have they shown any like detonate dead monsters? I'm sure there is.
spiders that were just like so nasty, and like we looked at the damage. I don't remember exactly why this occurred, but it was just like, oh, it's literally doing 10 times the damage it was supposed to be doing, right? And like someone just made a typo, and yet like we played a bunch of times, and like none of the people that were testing before we did a beta noticed the fact that was happening, right? They just managed to avoid it all the time, or they only got hit by one of the bits, or you know, something like that. And so you know, we just missed it. Look, I'm sure that's going to happen, right? Like there will be some rough edges like that, but you know, we'll, as soon as we hear about them, we will do our best to fix them. But look, we're trying to root out all that stuff as much as we can at the moment, and you know, hopefully the players don't experience too much of that. Yeah, I'm sure it'll happen. But yeah, look, we don't want people to be just like randomly out of nowhere, just dying.
I wonder if when PoE 1 League comes out, people are gonna play it for like a week and go back to PoE 2.
For nothing. Yeah, that's something we'll just have to make sure we're addressing as we get more balance testing in.
Right. The term I hear a lot from people.
I really think it's gonna be hard to go back to PoE 1. It just feels so dated compared to PoE 2.
Especially who went to the recent.
I think it'll be hard to go back to any ARPG because they all feel so dated compared to PoE 2.
Event in LA is War of Attrition. That's what it feels like in Acts 1, 2, and 3. So there's nothing really instant happening. You're fighting against monsters. They're draining you down. You're draining them down, and it's a war between you two. So there's no instant one shots really happening unless it really is your fault. That's what I heard from like Big Ducks. He said, "If I died, it was my fault." I felt good about that. I love that.
I mean, it's like that in PoE 1 pretty much too. I mean, there's a few. I just hate the random one shot thing.
Right.
On
well, that is the goal that is the goal for sure, to make it feel that way.
Okay. And it sounds like the deadliness is on a by monster level. And a lot of people are curious. I think Mark said in the endgame presentation that every map is fully random at endgame. All monster types, no matter of biome. Is there anything that determines?
So there actually is a like one monster, I believe, or at least a type of there will be one pack in the map that's always there, but all the rest of them are random. And the kind of main point we were trying to make with that is that in PoE 2, we pretty much all monsters. I mean, look, there are some like monsters that are just like swarmy little things that don't really do anything, but for the most part, monsters all have some kind of ability or mechanic or interesting thing going on with it. And so, in the end game, it really is the fact that you've got the combination of all those different types that really makes the combat interesting.
Yeah.
And you kind of never really know what you're going to get. And so, I mean, look, PoE 1 does have that effectively the same idea going on. It's just that so few of the monsters in PoE 1 actually have like different mechanics, right? Like like 1 in every 5 might do, but it's like in PoE 2, it's like there are so many more things going on. They have movement skills and like random abilities and things like that. It's just there's just a lot going on with them. So that it's the combination of that really gets you that really introduces that stuff.
I do the play test, not the most recent one, but I've done one. World first, level 100. I don't know. There's probably like 5 people who care about that, so one of those 5. Actually, I don't know if I have not heard any talk about level 100. I've heard talk about, it's probably going to be Havoc. It'll be Havoc's group. I've heard talk about the Pinnacle boss and stuff, but I've actually heard nothing about level 100. I wonder how long it's going to take. I hope it takes a super long time. I hope it takes like 500 hours. Something stupid. I hope it takes forever. I'm going to be... If it's like... a couple days, I'm gonna be really disappointed. Because I think PoE 1 you level way too fucking fast.
These different biomes and mats, and then the rest is random. It
But
it
you're
makes
still
them.
the thing is you're still gonna get like some pretty out of place stuff. Like I know, like I went into a city map the other day and there's a gorilla attacking me, and I'm like, what the hell is this guy doing here? But you know, the end game's like that.
Are the bosses the same for every map? I'm sure they are. Like, you're not going to get a
So
gorilla boss in
effectively-
series. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So the bosses are picked for the map if they spawn.
Yeah, actually, the gem requirements are like super high level. I mean, they could just level slower, right? Or I guess, yeah. I mean, it could just like level slower with you, and yeah. No, be kind of cool. Would be if high level gems actually had a value. I mean, I guess corrupted ones do in PoE, but I don't know. Have they said anything about gem corruptions? Now that I think about it, I don't think I've heard anything about something like that. I don't know if anything. I haven't heard anything about the XP curve. No vol skills. A burb. Thanks for the prime gift.
Later on, we're talking about making it so that there are different, even within one map, we might have a couple of different bosses that can spawn there. But we'll kind of have to see how we go about that. It does take a bit of work, and so we haven't done that yet. And it kind of depends a bit on like how many maps there are versus how many bosses and that kind of stuff. So that can be fun too.
Oh, that sounds awesome. Sounds like some people would just get shot as they walk in. That's how I expect
Thanks
to
for the
be
prime,
when I walk into
Marcelo.
the pinnacle boss, whoever it is, for the first time. I expect to just get like Cirrus die beamed, and it's like, oh, all right, well, got to build up defenses better. I can't wait for that. On that note, too, all the boss arenas look like they have so much detail within them, and they're so distinct from their actual arenas from the campaign. The example I saw that stuck out to me was the Colossus is like now in the heart of a volcano. Is the level of detail and distinction there for a lot of the boss fights?
Yeah, so effectively we're trying to make it so that like ideally when we're using a boss in maps, we can put it in a different context so that it feels like a different fight. That like yeah, I mean look, we have to definitely reuse certain components of the arena because often there's arena mechanics that we have to make sure are there. But even just the feel of the arena that can make it feel quite different. Like for example, if you're talking about something like the Carrion Crone who's just in the second area. She's in a much bigger arena when you fight her in maps, and she also like all of her AOE abilities have been like ramped up so that they like have target a much bigger area, and things like the way the wolf spawning, that's like a different pattern. There's more of them and stuff like that. So effectively, like the fight actually feels quite a lot more advanced when you fight at a maps for that reason, just because the arena's different and like the placement of all of the markers that the designers use to like configure all that stuff. Like they've that there's a lot more that's gone into that. So effectively, that can make the recontextualize the fight in quite a cool way.
Oh, that just sounds so exciting. How many of these are we getting on launch? Is it around 50?
Yeah, so the 50 bosses, like I mean, all the bosses that you have through campaign are in endgame in some way.
Okay.
So it's just a question of whereabouts, how we use them, and so on. But of course, then there's also the bosses that are in endgame that aren't in the campaign as well. So there's quite a bit of that too.
Yeah, the secret pinnacle that I'm going to try to get you to leak at some point during this interview.
You'll have to wait. I definitely won't be leaking that one.
Okay. All right, next question also on Endgame. So previously, I think earlier this year in an interview, you mentioned that once you get to Endgame, about a third of the loot will come from pack monsters, a third will come from special mechanics, and a third will come from bosses and maps. Now with bosses only being in every 4 maps on average, is that philosophy still the same, or has that shifted a little bit?
Yeah, so that definitely has shifted due to the change to the way the mapping endgame worked. So I mean, this was always a struggle, right? Because the real thing wasn't so much the amount of loot, but the amount of time you're spending on things. And I think that having to spend 1/3 of your time, if you're not interested in doing boss fighting right now, is a little bit high, and definitely wasn't working. So I really we like to give players choice about what type of content they can fight, and we realized the bossing was also one of those type of things, right? Like, do you want to do bossing or don't you?
No, it's kind of cool that you could just avoid map bosses, actually.
So yeah, I think that the balance of that is a lot better now, and I honestly don't know what the percentage would be now that you sort of have control over it at this point. But effectively, yeah, like that has definitely changed around due to that.
Okay.
Thanks for the
And
50-year Prime,
how is
Bryce.
pack difficulty versus boss difficulty? Are bosses just
He's
harder? Like,
YouTube
I know a lot of
man.
people say like, "Oh, I want to chill when I'm fighting packs," and then when bosses, they can be really intense. Is it kind of that difference?
Yeah, exactly. And look, the big reason for making the change of not having a boss in every map area was literally for this, right? To make it so that we can make the bosses actually hard relative to relative to the pack difficulty, because that's what sort of that sort of maintains the integrity of the combat system, if you will, because like that's where you really have to get into the detail, like really concentrating and like actually using all your abilities to the maximum. Whereas pack clearing, you can chill out a little bit more. But that being said, we still want you to run into rares occasionally that are like crazy. So it's you still want that, but they're not going to be as crazy as the uniques are.
Okay, awesome. Rapid fire question on Endgame. Why does the Waystone or map opening UI still have 4 slots? Is that intentional? Is there something that hasn't been revealed?
So we actually had 4 slots when we started PoE 1 as well, even though we had no idea what we were going to use that for. So it's just like one of those things where it's just like you put it in there. It's like, maybe we'll use this one day. So there's literally no other reason than that. We had 4 in the back of the old days, and we're going to just do it again now. Just it's fun little thing. And look, one day I'm sure we'll find something to do for that.
Okay, I love it. No, I didn't know that about Path of Exile 1, that it was always 4. That's hilarious. That's good. All right, another one that could be a little long. I'm not sure. Maybe it's a simple answer. So it sounds like there are currently 4 tiers of endgame boss or endgame encounters, but technically from what we saw from the Atlas passive trees, we can get +5 to those encounter levels.
Right.
Is the 5th tier meaningless, or is there an extra secret tier?
So what happened there is I'm a programmer, so I always count from 0. So when I say difficulty 4, it's like the first difficulty is difficulty 0, and then you've got 1, 2, 3, 4. So there's technically 5 difficulty tiers there, but I referred to the top one as difficulty 4. So maybe the players will refer to that a different way than I am. But
Okay.
yeah, that's just what that is. Now, technically, it is actually possible because of the fact that the small nodes and the big nodes are the way they are. It's actually possible in some cases to cause it to be one tier even above that. But if you do that, it will not result in the difficulty being higher. That's actually kind of just a quirk of the way that the nodes are. So that's just effectively capped in that regard, which I guess might be kind of fun to have like an extra sort of hidden thing like that. But we decided not to in the end. So yeah, there's just there's
Diablo has
effectively
more
5
difficulties.
difficulties, four difficulties above the bottom one. Yeah.
I know you're saying that, but everybody needs to try that on launch, okay? There's a hidden difficulty, maybe that they don't want us to know about.
I don't think so. No.
Okay. This one might be pretty quick too. So how high in tier do waystones go? We saw tier 79 in the endgame teaser. Is that...
That's probably just the area level.
So, I mean, the way what it's supposed to be is like T15 is like it goes from T1 to T15. I think it might have been that it was listing object level there, and there might even have been some inconsistencies between different clips depending on when they were shot. I'm not 100% sure about that, but ultimately it goes from T1 to T15. However, there is a corruption outcome that can go +1. So that lets you that just lets you go a little bit further.
+1.
Ooh, I love that.
With that.
Okay, so it was potentially like a monkey issue. That's what I'm going to call the
Yeah,
little
sure, if you like.
inconsistencies. Yeah, the monkey issue. Okay.
If you like.
Okay. Awesome. Okay, well, that was it on Endgame for now. Now I just want to go into a few general questions about the game. Some rapid fire, some a little bit longer. This first one, I'm curious, going into early access, what's one system you are hyper confident won't need further iteration, and one system you're pretty sure is going to be broken under the weight of the players and you're going to need to have a lot of iteration on?
It's a really hard question. Look, I think that where I'm most happy is like all the way the skill and support system works, I think is very solid. Like I'm very happy with all of that. I think it's just a massive improvement over how PoE1 was. I would say that the stuff that's going to require a lot of iteration will definitely be end-game stuff, right? Because like that's the stuff that's had the least testing from players, and from betas and things like that.
I feel like everything eventually gets iterated on.
Like I'm pretty confident in it, but like you never know what will happen when people actually go for that. So I mean, look, yeah, there's a lot of stuff that could need changing there, and we'll just have to work on that as we see the players, as we see what the players think. But the other thing as well is that of course the end game is where there's the most I guess like you have to get it right completely, because it's like that's kind of like your final, like the final experience you're having is like playing through that content. So it's like you can have a single boss fight that's like maybe people don't like it in campaign.
None of the rapid fire things have been rapid fire.
If you're talking about just the core staple of what it is that you're doing in the end game, you have to make sure you get that exactly correct. And even the tiniest details can significantly affect the experience. So I'm sure there'll be a lot of tweaking there, and like some things maybe just like a tiny number tweak, but it ends up being like a massive difference as far as player experience goes. Yeah, I'm sure there'll be a lot of iteration there.
Okay. Now, one system that I've had a little bit of discussion about in my community is the flask changes. Are you pretty confident in those, limiting you to just having a life and mana, or do you see yourself perhaps allowing that for a wider variety of flasks in the future if you want to reintroduce them?
I do think that it is important to make it so that is as simple as possible, because it really is one of those friction points you get for new players. But I think the charm system is really where we can go wild there. And so I think if we were doing like more kind of interesting stuff, or like expanding on that, I think we'd do it in the charms where we can. That's kind of intended to be the thing that you can expand on with that stuff. I just don't want it to turn again into a situation where you feel like you have to constantly be pressing buttons like all the time in order to be able to do that stuff, because I think that really was kind of wearing on
You'd be too busy pressing your 8 attack buttons.
And it's like, if you're going to be pressing buttons, I would rather the buttons you're pressing are for using active skills rather than just using flasks. So yeah, ideally it can sort of move some of the like physical skill off just pushing flask buttons and move it on to using skills instead.
Okay. All right. This is a tough one. Maybe not for you. Over the past 6 or so years, what has been the single most challenging aspect of development? I know it's broad.
Yeah, so
I mean, I met him in real life and he acted the same way. I'm pretty sure that's just his personality.
I think really the big challenge is just underestimating like the scope of what it is we set out to do. And it's one of those things where we're constantly having to, it's like we have a quality level we want to hit, and it feels like it shouldn't be as difficult as it is to hit that quality. Like it just really is a constant battle. Yeah, I mean, look,
I think that Jonathan, though,
it's difficult.
I think that's why so many people are resonating with this release. It's very obvious that you have hit a high quality level here. I mean, it's spread like wildfire. I saw you talking to DM and Ghazi and surprised at how many people are interested. I am having
Holy
people who I
shit,
haven't
what
talked
the
to in like a
fuck is that
decade
website?
reaching out to me about PoE 2 because they're searching and they like saw my face or something and they're like, holy crap, there's this new game I just heard about. Like, it's spreading everywhere because the quality is so... you waited until it was ready to showcase it, right? And it looks phenomenal. So...
yeah, I mean, as I said, like just getting there has just been such a thing. Like when we announced in 2019, we
Down,
thought that
Mr.
we were going to be
President.
releasing PoE 2 in like 2020, in like 2021. Like it felt like it was like 2 years out.
Right.
And like it's just yeah, it's difficult, right? Like just the yeah, and even it's like even like is it how long ago now? I'm thinking like so 20. Yeah, look, it's like the funny thing is it always feels like it's 2 years out. Like no matter how far deep into development, like no matter how far away it is, it's always like because 2 years feels like forever, right? 2 years is like forever in the future, and so therefore, like no matter what the scope that you think that you have is, it's always like, oh yeah, we can do it in that amount of time. Sure, absolutely. And so yeah, it's just real tough, like doing that. And it feels like no matter how much experience we get, I mean, obviously, Mark and I have both been in game development a long time. No matter how much experience you get, it's like it still feels like it's impossible to really know how long something will actually take by the time you've gone things through. So yeah, it's just it's tough. It's tough for sure.
I know you said it always feels like 2 years away, Jonathan, but 9 days log in, okay? We're 9 days out.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So a few really rapid fire questions here. You guys opted in for GeForce Now for PoE 2. Do you know if that's going to be available for early access launch, or I know you guys don't have control over that, but do you know if it will be available?
I believe it's supposed to be. We've been told it is. So hopefully that.
Oh, you guys told me. I asked about that the other day. You guys told me it was canceled.
Works out and people can use that.
Awesome. Now, how about the trade site on day one? Is that going to be functional?
Yeah, so we're doing everything we can to make sure that's the case. I think that there'll be some items that maybe won't show up correctly, and hopefully, like for example, the way that skill gems are rendered is like completely changed, and so I think what they're going to do for skill gems is just like show the name of the gem and the level, rather than having to work out like all the stats and everything how that works. And I think for something like gems, it doesn't really matter because
Wait, what?
everything we can.
Do you know if rapid fire questions here? You guys opted in for GeForce Now control over that.
Told it is. So
site on day one, is that
all works out and people can use that?
Awesome. Now, how about the trade site on day one? Is that going to be
the
functional?
trade site.
Yeah, so we're doing everything we can to make sure that's the case. I think that there'll be some items that maybe won't show up correctly, and hopefully, like for example, the way that skill gems are rendered is like completely changed, and so I think what they're going to do for skill gems is just like show the name of the gem and the level, rather than having to work out like all the stats and everything how that works. And I think for something like gems, it doesn't really matter because there's nothing about the gem other than just like the name and the level that actually matters as far as trade is concerned. So they're going to do their best to get everything rendered correctly, but I think it's really important to make sure we've got trade on day one.
Definitely. Oh yeah, people love trading. Now PvP, does that exist in any form? Yeah,
so
like
you
simple
can
duels.
yeah, you can do simple duels just like duels like you could in PoE 1. We're not going to be doing anything more than that for now. Yeah, that's it's there, but like we haven't done any effort really towards it. It's just like like it just is what it is, just as a fun thing. If you want to challenge your friend and just like just do a thing, you can do that if you want.
Cool. Now, in the second run through of the campaign, Cruel, do bosses once again drop permanent buffs as they will on the first run through for those optional bosses, or are none of those available in the second run through?
Yep. So the second run through, it definitely does have that. So yeah, you're going to want to look for those as well. I believe that for them, that some of them are the same and some of them are different. So you'll have to look around through the map to see what's going on with that.
Oh, okay. Curious. Now, this one is...
Get fire question.
I want to be gentle with it, but it's something that a lot of people have talked about in the past. There is an MTX that is audio based that plays in towns, and everyone wants to hear the sweet songs of Camille when they go into the Clearfell encampment. Is there any way that you guys are thinking about maybe an audio slider for MTX or something like an audio adjustment maybe, or is that on your radar?
I mean, it's something that I've heard complaints about recently, so
Okay, that's probably that's a pretty good question.
But I can't say I've got a solution for it right now. By the way, just one question. Speaking of audio, do you hear like a loud beeping, or is that just on my end?
That is just on your end. Chat,
sure,
do we
fair
hear a loud beeping? Let's see. No beeping. It's on your end.
All
is
right,
everything
cool,
okay
good.
at
Yep,
the GGG
yeah,
office?
I think it's fine. It's just coming through my headset, so
Headset's
I'm not
low,
sure what's going
low
on. It's all right,
battery.
It's fine. I'll just ignore it.
They're telling you to not talk about the goblins.
Sure. Maybe.
Okay.
Yeah,
oh my...
unfortunately, I don't have a good answer for you for that. But
okay, no,
yeah,
that's totally fine.
I do understand the issue, though.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, oh, sorry. Items. So, in the last time people got their hands on PoE2, we saw obviously the tiers, which you talked about, and can't wait to get my hands on that. We also saw items dropping with terms like advanced,
yeah, there's like
expert,
bandit
and
quest
ultimate.
stuff.
Are those
yeah,
related
yeah,
to tiers, or what is that?
So the reason why that is because so we didn't want to release. So what we've done in PoE2 is that all of the acts, they have a much more like the items that you find in each act are like way more related to the content of that act. So like as soon as you go to the desert, you're going to be finding like all of these like Marrakech themed items and so on. So for Act 4 and 5 and 6. We've obviously got a whole big set of base types that are all like, you know, related to those things. And so what we did was we're like, okay, we don't really want to like just have those dropping now because they kind of don't make sense for the content they're in. So what we decided to do was effectively make a duplicate of the base types that goes into the second set of difficulty, in second difficulty, and that way we can drop all of those there, and then that will mean that we just don't have the we don't have that we don't have to release all of that stuff now, and then effectively at the point when we release the acts, we'll effectively also release the base types at the same time, and those base types will get replaced by the and the art and everything will get replaced by the new base types that we've already got. So yeah, that's effectively the what's going on with that. Now, in in-game, there are some base types that relate to just in-game. I'm not 100% sure exactly what the situation is with regard to the art stuff that they've done there, but effectively, by the time we're sort of completely done, it should be that we're not like having to repeat any art anywhere and all that sort of stuff. But for the time being, we've just got the that going on.
Oh, okay, awesome. Now, also related.
Havoc's teasers aren't real teasers. They're just like from, I think they're from his footage. They haven't shown traps and runs yet.
It's items and the tiers. Obviously, tier 5 item will have amazing mods, amazing rolls, and the like once you identify it. What happens if you craft on it?
So yeah, it doesn't affect anything after you've identified it. So effectively, once you've ID'd it, like you've seen what the mods are there, then effectively it is just a regular item as far as any other, like just like any other item would be. And that's kind of important because it's only really in the unidentified state when you see the tier. After that point, the tier doesn't matter anymore because like the decision that resulted from that is already decided and everything's everything's done.
Okay, awesome. Thanks for the question, by the way, MP. That was from Empyrean. Okay, another one. So I know that you vastly increased the number of orbs that are dropping in early game, and the intent is for people to be using said orbs on crafting. Are you at all worried about how this will affect the greater economy if people decide to just hoard everything and try to post it on the trading post? I'm curious about that because I'm going to be spamming my gear, but I think a lot of people will be like, I'll just save it to trade, you know?
Isn't that the
I think it will be fine. So the nice thing about currency is that it's self-syncing, right? Like you get to actually use all that stuff, and I'm pretty sure people will be using it more because they have more. Like I think that's just how it will work.
before your reset beam.
So usually speaking, you don't really get hyperinflation with currency items because the way that they actually have as I said, because they're self-syncing.
Yeah.
But you never know. Like, we never really can tell exactly what will happen with an economy until we actually see it. But I really hope we don't have any problems from that, because having the more currency in the game just definitely makes the game significantly better to play through the game. You know, I'm loving it. I just like the experience of doing all that stuff. So yeah, I really want to be able to keep that. And I think just the fact that you kind of don't have the scouring orb anymore, and the way that like things are always added, like you're going to be wanting to add mods all the time. Like, it's just a common thing. And there's even sort of rules, like, for example, so it used to be that when you alked an item, it gave you a random set of mods from 4 to 6, but now it's always 4. So it's like there's always going to be that you want to do the alk and then the exalts. So like, you know, there's just more uses for that stuff. Like the adding stuff definitely, you know, just happens more often.
Yeah, I heard somebody got 4 exalted orbs by the end of Act 1 and just felt so good being able to slam their items. So
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, runes. I know they're a recent addition. I had a few questions about them. First, are all
what's going to be the biggest currency denomination? Like annuls?
Runes just basic stats such as resistances and the like, or are there any spicy combinations that might remind us of
Holy, back to the
ARPG?
back to the GCP standard?
Maybe later down the line.
So we don't have rune words. And the funny thing about the funny thing about that is that, like, I actually had a long conversation about this because you know, it's one of those things that everyone remembers loving. But the funny thing about that is that, like, what they actually remember loving was not so much the mechanic of rune words, but just the fact that all the rune words were super OP. Like, you know, the rune words were just crazy powerful. And so, like, when people are like, oh, I love rune words, it's like they think it's the mechanic they liked, but no, like, it's just the items were just absolutely outrageous. Yeah, it's
yeah, rune words I think the thing with rune words is it's not about the rune words themselves. I mean, maybe some people like them because they're OP. I mean, that's not why I like them. It's just good to, like, it adds an element in the story that pretty much every RPG is missing, where you can actually look forward to getting something.
Sort of funny how,
like, in pretty much every ARPG, there's nothing to look forward to. Like in D2, you got, like, okay, time to farm some runes in the tower for Countess, and then you get the item.
Like that.
Okay.
But what I will say is that, like, so runes are intended to be the kind of simple ones that don't have a lot of like a lot of complexity going on. So it's the soul cores that you can put in the same sockets. Those are the ones that are intended to kind of have where there's more complexity, there's different stats, there's different things going on with them.
Okay. And with those, they're unremovable, correct? You can't take them out of gear once you socket them in?
And that's just kind of our general philosophy of the fact that we want most crafting to be additive. Now, we still do have some crafting things that remove mods, but I guess the difference with the sockets is that every single mod that went in there, it's like there's no randomness to those decisions, right? Like, every single thing you put in, it's like you completely control that outcome. So therefore, we don't feel like we have to provide a way to remove that, because it's like that's entirely in your control. Whereas when you're talking about the random chance addings, like, then it's like there can be ways that are also based on random chance to be able to remove that again. And then we've also got things like the omens that allow you to have more control over that. So, like, that sort of stuff makes sense. But for the socketables, it's like, well, yeah, it's like you chose to put that in. It's like, you know, I think the additive philosophy works fine for that.
Okay, awesome. Now, 2 more questions on items here really quickly. One of them is about Splinter stack size. Now, I know we want to declutter the screen for Path of Exile 2 and keep the focus on combat, but it looked like from the trailer, the stack size, for example, the Breachstone is still 300. What's the design philosophy between, like, 300 stack size and 25 stack size?
So they
Are you
actually
ready to
drop
click 300
like,
splinters?
in stacks, and the reason why that's important is because it means that we can have effects that say if there's a mod that's like 10% splinters, it means that when we drop a stack of 10, that plus 10% can actually make it a stack of 11. Which, so basically, it's just to give granularity so that when we're dropping them, we actually can, like, you know, have the mods like a plus 10% can actually be a thing that actually does something. So that's the reason why it's 300. It isn't necessarily to change, like, the amount of, like, things on the screen, or the amount of the amount of duration that it takes to actually get to the boss. It's just about the granularity for mods, basically.
Okay, awesome. One more item question, and then just one final question for you. Thank you so much for your time, Jonathan. I really appreciate it. Will there be vendor recipes in Path of Exile 2? And if so, any examples?
So we actually decided to not do the system the same way how we did it before. So each, yeah. So basically, we no longer have the vendor recipe like idea as a concept where there's just a vendor who, where you can just do like any combination of items in the vendor. So the vendor that has that same UI is like for disenchanting. And then effectively what we've done is we've tried to pull like the different vendor recipes out into like benches or like items in the world or like NPCs with specific modes or things like that. Effectively like all of those things we want to try and make sure that they're kind of like just more
He's got 5 video ideas in his head already right now.
discoverable than what they were in PoE 1. So like what we kind of want to do is like if we're going to do like for example the quality recipe where you had like 40% quality and you get a whetstone.
Yep.
Now that we've got the salvage bench, that's like a specific bench that's able to effectively
Look at dude, he's licking his lips. He's so ready to upload 5 videos on that one question. You see that? He's fucking pumped.
replace the thing that was doing by something that effectively serves the same function, but it's like discoverable now because you've got like a bench that's dedicated to quality and also
The
socket,
videos are
currency
flowing.
items.
The videos
And
must
if we're
flow.
to do for example, a 3-to-1 recipe, there is an item, a thing you get later, which has like three slots and then a bottom slot, and then you click the button that like combines them. And it's like got its own thing. So effectively, it means that like it's like more obvious like when there's stuff like that. And effectively, for each time where we want to have something that's like a vendor recipe, we can sort of find a place to put it, like make it more thematic, like have a little UI for it. There's even things like well, maybe I won't spoil the other ones, but effectively, whenever, but effectively, whenever we're doing, when we need a function like that, I think it's cooler to have a specific user interface, a specific place, a specific NPC, a specific object, like something like that you find that allows for that. And so it kind of gives you a hint that such a thing even exists in the first place. And then now that you've seen that, you're like, okay, what actually goes in here? Like, what is this for? Like, then like maybe you can have like little lore hints, things like that. It just makes the whole thing a little bit more discoverable, and I think a little bit more interesting. So yeah, that's effectively how I've replaced that system.
Yeah, when you said that, now I'm thinking that there could be nodes on the Atlas that house systems like this, little secrets where you could go and find these little crafting benches, which just sounds like so much fun. I know we talked about it earlier, the Atlas and the exploration aspect of it.
Right.
Huge W. I cannot wait to go in and just explore it. It's going to be great. Yeah. Okay, Jonathan, I've got one last question for you, and then we'll let you go. Thank you so much.
Aren't those the last two questions?
Time again.
No problem.
I want you to give me the best single reason for everyone in the chat right now, everyone watching this VOD, to buy a supporter pack and log in on December 6th at 2 p.m. Eastern.
I think that really probably the main thing that you're going to love is just fighting those bosses. The combat with them is just like so fun. They're so varied and interesting. Like I'm just like, there's a lot of them to fight. If you play on December 6th, there'll be a lot of bosses to fight, and I'm sure you're going to have a great time with them.
What I should do is I go straight to Chris Wilson. Send him a message. Hey, one last interview, old boy. One last interview. Let's go.
It really is, I think, one of the things we're doing the best out of all the things we're doing.
Jonathan, will you be logging in on December 6th?
Of course. I mean, as soon as there's some kind of horrible fire with the servers, then I'll immediately have to probably deal with that instead. But so long as there aren't any problems, I'll just get.
I don't know if you stepped down or what, but I don't know. I think he started to do more of the business side or something.
Gonna be playing, absolutely.
I don't think he's gone.
All right, Jonathan, man, it's been great every time I talk with you.
He just didn't want to.
Everybody appreciates your time
or whatever.
Good luck the next 9
days.
I
don't blame him.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great,
I'll
great
talk to you later, man.
Great to talk to you. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. All right. Talk later, man.
Right.
See ya.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks for the 56-year resubs, Randus.
I did respect his time. I didn't want to go over. I had some other questions, but I didn't want to go too over. Okay.
What this is after?
Right.
What? So
I thought that was
funny?
pretty damn good. We actually got some good info. The rare info. Holy, the rare info. The rare monsters actually sound legit, right? The rare monsters don't have just extra modifiers. They change and are chosen specifically.
That was a pretty good interview. Pretty good. I can't interview him because I don't want to. That game, what game? Probably not. Oh, bizarre. No. I mean, Crypt thinks it's good. Surely it's good, right? Actually, I have 2 keys. I could just send you a key. I think it gave me 2. A hot one thing with different kinds of pilk, that'd be sick. But Bex told me I couldn't bring pilk to ExileCon. Actually, yeah, it doesn't work for them anymore. Alright. I'll burb.